Well, everybody, welcome to the April LPA board meeting. Welcome everyone to Pagosa. Thanks Pagosa for hosting us. Call the meeting to order. Start off with Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thanks. Let's have a look at the agenda, and I'll take any requests for modification or clarifications on the agenda. You will see one note in onboard about changing a word under, let's see, what section is that? For resolution 2025-07, changing the last word on that resolution to disaster response line of credit authorization versus what it is in the current agenda is application. So we'll tap on that again when we get to that agenda item. But that's to my knowledge, that's the only agenda change so far. Anything else? Anybody? Go ahead, Nicole.
Can you get an update of the Tri-State's long-term financial forecast and executive session?
Happy to.
So put that as E under executive session.
Makes sense. Okay. Anybody else? Colder, do you have one?
Just make a motion to approve the agenda with the change in Nicole question.
Okay.
Tri-State one, financial forecast of executive session.
Perfect. So moved.
Second.
We moved and seconded by Holly. Any more discussion on the agenda? Okay, all in favor of that slightly modified agenda, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Or abstentions? All right, thanks. We have an agenda. Okay, today, a slightly special safety moment, I think, in recognition of tomorrow, which is National Line Workers Day. We're going to get a safety moment, safety update from the operations team.
Nice.
So this past week, there was an electrical contact in the state of Colorado. It was very severe. The line worker has survived up to this point. It is a very stark reminder for our crews. Sometimes they're going up every single day. They're holding thousands and thousands of volts in their hands. And it's very easy to get complacent. And moments like these brings everybody back down to earth. We have tailboards before every single job. And even those, it's very easy to become complacent. So sadly, this brought to light, the dangers of what they do every single day. We insulate, we isolate, test, we ground. And those are things that we spoke of this last week to remind our crews that even though they feel like superheroes up there, they are not. We're all human. And so we reiterated, insulate, isolate, test and ground. And if it's not grounded, it's not dead. And so our crews, they do a great job. Really looking forward to Thursday. Hopefully you can join us here in Pagosa to recognize the line workers and in Durango, both at 4 p.m. And just tell them thank you for what they do.
Thanks a lot, Gary. Yeah, just a slightly additional comment on that. Complacency is a thing that happens, and one of the things that I think combats complacency is culture. And I appreciate, the effort that goes in, and don't understand it as deeply as I would like to or should. But I would say that, we as a board want to contribute to that, and I'll give kudos again to Kirsten for bringing this up several months ago, that us just having a regular safety moment in the board meeting is intended to foster culture. You know, I don't know that we gain a lot individually out of having a safety moment in the board meeting, although talking about driving and, you know, our own personal safety has some value. Mostly it creates culture. And so that everybody knows that everybody's thinking safety from sort of minute one, in every meeting, every time we get together. So hopefully we're doing what we can, to propagate that culture. Thanks very much.
Quick question, insulate, isolate something ground, what was the something?
Test.
All right, then into, agenda item 2, member comments and concerns. Graham, will you recite for us the preamble?
Yes. The board encourages comments about the cooperative from its members. The board will take all member comments under consideration, but will not provide a response during the member comment period. The board asks each participant's comments pertain to cooperative business. Those wanting to address the board during the public comment period are granted 5 minutes to address their topics. Lengthy comments to the board should be submitted in writing. Formal complaints must be filed in writing and submitted in compliance with applicable board policy. Comments from the public will be directed to the entire board and not to any individual. No personal attacks will be allowed. Failure to follow these requirements may cause the public comment period to be terminated. Copies of our cooperative policies and procedures on public comment and filing complaints are available on the cooperative website.
Thanks, Graham. And then let's go ahead and get started. Anybody in the room want to go first? Dusty in the corner.
Thanks. I just wanted to say thanks for doing the in-person meeting, especially out here in District 1, and gives us an opportunity to see everyone face to face, and it's tough to replace that interaction, so I appreciate that a bunch. The other thing I wanted to mention was there was a fire on our property over the weekend, and put some of our LPA assets in jeopardy, and but the operations guys got on it right away, and already have a plan to have stuff taken care of immediately. So just want to give them thanks for looking out for that, and to let you know that it's not a typical event. I do a lot of ditch burning out there myself, and we take care to make sure we protect those assets. This one was the neighbor's fire that got away, and I wish I would have been there to help out. And then the third thing was, again, all of the information that you guys have been great about publishing and getting out. Please continue that. The copy meetings are great to have. So much interactions. It's really great to help kind of interface and keep the membership included in the times that we're in. Thanks.
Thank you. I guess that's it for the room. Let's go online and somebody with better eyes has to call out. Emily. All right, Emily, you're first. We'll bring you in and you have the floor.
Great. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. Hi, my name is Emily. I live in District 3, and I wanted to come on here and thank the board and CEO and staff for securing a significant reduction in our power supply costs at the last board meeting. Durango is not the most affordable place to live, and as a young person, myself and many of my peers have a tough time making it financially here. So when I saw the announcement that our new power supply contract with Mercuria for the bridge period will provide a 10% reduction in power supply costs compared to what we would have had to pay Tri-State, this was a huge success. I was really excited about that. So I just wanted to come on here and thank you all for not only your commitment, but following through with making affordability a top priority. Thanks.
Thank you, Emily. Anyone else in the waiting room that has a question or comment, go ahead and raise your hand.
The rest are all staff members.
All right, sorry for my bad eyesight. Okay, moving on to agenda section 3, consent board items. Anybody have any points of clarification, any clarification required there? Before we take a motion to approve that. All right, looking for a motion. Moved by Rachel. Yeah, thank you for calling that out. Tim, anything you have on clarification for consent board items?
You can wait for the motion. I just have a question on the minutes.
Okay, yeah, so Rachel moved to approve, second by Joe. Okay, discussion on consent board items. You have the floor, Tim.
Sorry, I didn't write this earlier. I've been kind of busy. The committee and policy update, the very last sentence of the first paragraph under that, it's page 2 of the minutes, I think. It said the policy will be placed on the COP's March consent agenda and is recommended for full board approval at the April meeting. But I thought we did that at the March meeting. So I wasn't sure if that was,
So that should, go ahead, if you want to speak to it.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say that should be correct procedurally. We did, just have, solicitation of comments. We didn't really receive much in the way of comments, and we weren't really anticipating that, which is why the Committee on Policies put it on its consent agenda. And so we didn't really reopen it as a committee. We sort of, approved recommending the, adoption of those changes at this meeting. So I believe that is a correct statement of where we are procedurally, and Janelle is nodding. She wrote the minutes. She paid a lot of attention to the video.
all right, looks like we got ahead of the COP. That's pretty good. Thanks.
Okay, any other discussion on approval of consent board items? Seeing none, all in favor of that motion, say aye, raise your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? Or abstentions? All right, consent board items have passed. Moving on into agenda section 4, CEO and staff report. Take it away, Chris.
All right, thank you. Great to be with everybody here in Pagosa. Thanks to the community center for hosting us. Really love being over here. Let's start with, we've got the dashboard document that was shared in the board packet. I'm going to just do a few highlights from that, as is our normal practice. Let's start with the key indicator slide. Slide number 2. Let Drew scroll down for us. There we go. Thank you, sir. Not a lot to report on here. Things are in, I think, good shape as far as the status goes. A couple comments first on the cash reserves. That is an improvement from last month as planned. We had the board decision to do the rate change on April 1st, meant that we were going to draw down our cash in the first few months of the year. That is recovering as we expected. I'll have a little bit more color on that for you when we get to the full finance slide of why that is the case. We're back up to 5 and improving our cash position as planned. The only other one that has a yellow there is the BE sales. We've had the same problem a couple of months. The data that's coming in on sales is typically behind. And so you'll see the asterisk there doesn't include the EV sales. Otherwise, we would be hitting target, or we're pretty sure we would be. We're thinking we just go to a month behind on the data so that we don't have to worry about this. And so you'll see in the future dashboards, we won't have that problem going forward, but we're on track on our BE sales. So nothing to worry about there. We just don't have the latest EV data. And next month, we'll just go 1 month in arrears so that we don't have the delay problem. So happy to pause here though and see if there are any questions on our key indicators.
Do we have any sort of a total on the BE sales, like, you know, in 2004, 2003, and just to, again, give us a full indication of the, you know, the annual, I guess, output folks time, just for future reference.
Yeah, Director Lewandowski, absolutely. And if you look in the appendix of this packet, you'll see the 2025.
Okay.
So we always do kind of the current year. We have that exact same chart for 2024. It would have been in your December packet, or it is in your December packet, but I'm happy to pull that out.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah. Any other questions on this one? All right, let's go on to the next slide. A couple things to highlight here. First, we had a really incredible wildfire tabletop exercise that we did to make sure our staff is ready in the event that we have a major fire that we're dealing with in our service territory. Let me turn it over to Elizabeth for some extra detail.
Okay, here's how it starts. Day 1, 800 hours. The wildfire ignites in rugged terrain approximately 5 miles from our tri-state 115 kV transmission line near Bayfield. The fire spreads quickly due to dry conditions and gusty winds. So that's kind of how after we set the ground rules and have everybody in the room, that's the first injection. And then we go from there. We have 5 different injections. And we worked through an entire scenario. Dan and his mind was trying to pinpoint exactly the location of the fire. But we get a group of people together that would, participate primarily in the incident, command center. So, you know, we really try to be prepared at, LPEA, because we know there are gonna be a lot of things going on out in the field. So it's a lot of coordination with EMS. And we also then use our tabletop drill to improve our emergency management plan and our fire mitigation plan. One of the things that came out of this particular tabletop is, we've been talking for a while about getting the actual incident command center ready to go. And so now we have a tub in both, Coast Springs and Durango, with all of the, materials that we need. So we have org charts, we have binders, we have everything we need, we know where we need to go. And we also identified, emergency response personnel at LPEA and assigned, ICS training to those individuals. So if you're going to be part of the emergency response team, you're now going to take a training, and we just anticipate with the conditions as they are now, this could be a real thing. So we moved this one up in our series. We have a very robust series of tabletops, and it was a great group trying to cover our safety specialists. Monthly by monthly, this one we just moved up and down on the calendars.
All right, thanks. Questions about that?
Sure. So the incident command center, is that just strictly LPA, or does that also incorporate the sheriff and the Forest Service or whatever?
Yeah, the one that we have would be just at LPEA, and we would be thinking about our own resources, but then, the sheriff is just right up the road from us, and so they have an incident command center as well, and we have a liaison too.
Because my guess is you probably have a lot of assets that would help them out as far as.
Yeah, exactly, there'd be a lot of collaboration, but we would have a team, generally speaking, it would be our CEO, potentially Dan, myself, we have a whole kind of a system in place, for how we handle LPEA related, equipment, crews, their basic needs out in the field, things like that, and then, yeah, we liaison.
Thank you. Sounds good.
Is there an opportunity to test that collaboration in another tabletop exercise?
Yeah, so we actually have a drill coming up in June where we will have everyone together. This drill will actually, the intention of the drill is a contact, but we intend to have everybody together including us. We have some pretty strong relationships already, between Jerry and Garrett and, our safety specialist, just, personal relationships and professional ones as well, but we're gonna put it to the test in June for an actual drill.
You need a victim. And what a great.
Yeah.
We'll keep posted. Yeah, we're gonna host, the drill will be at our 314 lot. And, incident command will be at LPEA, so it'll be a live, like, something's happening somewhere else, we're trying to organize.
Cool, great, thanks.
I would, share with you that if I was going to, well, I'll just share with you a call from not too long ago. Showed up on scene to a dumpster on fire, then started with trash right outside of the transmission station off of County Road 136. The dumpster fire caught the plastic lids and the winds drove it into wildland brush. And that was, well, you guys know where it is. It doesn't, they're so realistic that these things are happening. It happened just a few months ago. We responded to it and got it put out with a couple of trucks. But it wasn't from the utility side of things, it was from a dumpster right outside of that area. And that risk is real, and, arid climate and fuels that we have, the preparedness for it, the exercise, just talking about having that conversation and where are we going to go next with it, it's actual, so it's not, so I applaud it that those actions are taking place. Good job.
I guess in that front, seems like there's just one of the agencies you'll be interfacing with would be all of our public land managers potentially. And I know they're in massive transition. We're losing staff left, right, and center. And so how do you plan for that? kind of dynamic situation with some pretty key players in those roles.
Yeah, I'm happy to share. So I attend a bi-monthly public information officer call that spans our service area and service territory and beyond. And so we are actively talking about, okay, it used to be this person, today it's this person. So we are really trying to be dynamic and understand who do I need to know, who I need to call today, and then if it changes, making sure that we're updated. So we as a public information group are really trying to stay on top of that. It's changing. We have a Teams channel that Drew has been creating, where we have our own, list of emergency response staff. And then Amanda's also attached a list to that same channel where that information is updated. Yeah, that's a new challenge.
Great questions, and John, there's the proverbial dumpster fire and apparently the literal one too, so.
She started reading that, I'm like, I actually have a call.
Really? A dumpster fire?
7-1 show up in
Yeah.
that, and then I just thought, when we train and we do those practicals,
Yeah. Here we are.
here we are a month later, right?
Yeah, all right, great conversation, appreciate the follow-up questions. The second thing I wanted to highlight on this slide was the work we're constantly engaged in, which is how can we really look hard at our controllable expenses. I'm gonna circle back to that when we get to the finance section, but the insurance program for us, of course, is one of those things that we have some control over, and always trying to sharpen our game there. And Elizabeth, you want to tell us about the exercise you did with our carriers?
Absolutely. So we do an annual visit, or I should say our Federated, which is a cooperative insurance provider, visits us annually to run through kind of our statistics for the year, sometimes 3 years, sometimes 5 years if there's a trend, and then to do some site visits. So they, Darren Davenport was our representative, and he visited us on March 25th. He reviewed with us our 5-year loss run. We have actually stepped away from Federated as our workers' compensation carrier. We used to talk about workers' compensation with them. I'll talk about that one in a moment, but we basically were talking about all of our other insurance claims that we filed, either for our own assets or a member asset that we can make a claim through Federated. He thought that our performance was not bad compared to other cooperatives. We are also working with Federated to kind of dig into something they have called the SAFE app. It is basically, it can take a lot of our paper operations, paperless, so tailboards, keeping track of records, other things like that. So we spent some time working with Darren on that, or I would say about 3/4 of the way through that. We're pretty excited to potentially adopt that and socializing it internally. We also discussed several training opportunities they can provide. One is a virtual reality headset where employees can put on this headset and work through tasks. So you can sort of, it's like a live drill again that they're developing. And they did a tour of both the Durango and the Pagosa facilities. Really productive. They did take a look at our warehouses, our veg management plans. They're a great partner. So that was Federated. And then the next day we hosted Pinnacle. Pinnacle is a Colorado-based workers' compensation provider. They are incredible at what they do. They have partnered with us to really improve our performance in terms of workers' compensation. So we talked quite a bit about that. And then they offer us a lot of complimentary trainings. They say that was premiums on them. But they are going to take care of our forklift training, our flagger training. And then they have some package trainings that we can purchase in a number of the packages that we may be starting in 2026. They were quite impressed. Since we've partnered with them, we have no open workers' compensation claims, which was an issue with Federated. It was really hard to get claims to close. We have found with Pinnacle that we can get claims closed, with a lot of support for the employee, quite quickly. They have a lot of staff in place, they have advocates in place, and getting stuck in the workers' compensation program you can just fall through the cracks and have it over for a long time. So they've been great in that respect, and then also helping us with, some of the safety trainings. Will be great, and we'll continue on our, journey to zero lost time incidents.
All right, thanks, Elizabeth. Any questions on this slide? Those are the two highlights on the lift up. Okay, let's go on to keeping the lights on. A couple things I wanted to mention on this slide. If you look at the third check mark down, really excited to be doing more different use cases, different ways that we're going to be using drones this year and into the future. Great example from Jerry and his team on doing some inspections on the vegetation management side. So over to Jerry.
So Los Ranchitos, in coordination with the Plata County Office of Emergency Management and COSWAP, we are going to be moving forward with a vegetation management project in that subdivision. And it's going to be clearing our right of way from ground to ceiling. And that subdivision had the highest number of tree caused outages during our last big winter. And it's completely overgrown. So we did a flyover with the drone and took a before picture that we'll show you at some point. Then once we do the clearing, we're gonna do an after picture. And at the same time, we had the drone, we did pole inspections as well, and got really good bird's eye view of poles, close-ups, to see if there's any emergency maintenance that needs to happen as well. So it's gonna be really cool. Once the project is completed, the before pictures are great. We wanna wait until we get the after pictures, and Drew's team has a really cool setup where you can slide it back and forth. Yeah, so it's gonna be exciting. It's gonna improve our fire mitigation in that area for sure. We really are focusing on subdivisions that are high population and few exits. And so we are using this as a pilot. It's the perfect size, and we're just super excited. We should be completed with the project hopefully mid-June. Yeah.
Jerry is, so we'll be doing, I mean, you're paying for the mitigation, LPA is, I mean, not the HOA or anything like that.
Initially, we'll be paying for it. We did win a grant. It's gonna cover a portion of it.
Good.
Yeah. Through COSWAP.
COSWAP is,
It is the Colorado Strategic Wildfire Action Program.
Double points for remembering all that.
If I recall, you were looking at whether or not to contract out for drone footage or bring that in-house, that kind of certification. What do we have to do then?
So we've actually got a program in place now. We have a plan in place, and we are going to bring it in-house. We currently have 2 drones in-house. We have 3 pilots, and we have 3 pilots taking courses right now, 3 additional pilots. And it is going to become an in-house program. Yeah.
And then, since it is in a subdivision and people love their trees, how's the community response been? Because I know you're protecting them.
We have had incredible buy-in from the membership. We had the last public meeting we had with the subdivision members. There were a couple questions, but everybody's on board. And it's such an amazing thing to see the community come together like this, because they all realize the threat of wildfire. And just gotta turn on the news, sadly.
Thank you.
Your comment about focusing on subdivisions that have one way in, one way out really talked to me, because we have some terrible subdivisions like that in Archuleta County. So, like when I was on the fire department early on, there is like unit 6, for instance, and there is a way out the back, but you gotta know where it's at. And it's really kind of crappy road. So, I would suggest maybe talking to the fire department, at least knowing where that's at. Because you're out there, there's no way in and no way out except some really windy roads. So, and I think Kirsten probably lives in another area just like that.
There's no way.
So,
Yeah.
thank you for that.
Yeah,
Thank-
Garrett's currently working on setting up a meeting, with same thing, emergency management and sheriffs, and with Chris, a couple of our engineers, myself, and we're hoping to start tackling these subdivisions like that.
Yes.
And I might add, this is one of the reasons back to the question about in-house or contract. It's one of the reasons we wanted to bring it in-house. We did the analysis on the finances, makes a lot of sense to do it in-house. Outsourcing is very expensive. And it allows us scale and scope that we otherwise wouldn't have had. Because I think the vision here is prove this out in case studies like the one that we're talking about today. But we have 40,000 tolls, and we have a lot of places in both counties, all four counties, where you've got tough access issues that we're talking about. We've got to do this faster, and we've got to do it more often. And so that is really the goal of this program, is to get to those 40,000 polls more regularly, and do this prioritization that Jerry's talking about. And we think we can do both if it's in-house. So that was a big part of the decision.
Tack on one more thing about, the decision to bring it in-house. I think it brings another advantage, which is job flexibility and upward mobility. So we get to give people different opportunities that they didn't already have within the organization, and that helps with retention and overall morale. So I think it's, as long as it pencils, it's a great idea.
Yeah, that's a great point. All right, if there are no other questions on drone program, I'll go to the other thing I wanted to highlight here, which is the fourth check mark. We have resumed work on Turtle Lake and Yucca Estates capital projects. And turn to Dan for some additional detail.
Yeah, this was projects we had well underway. Then winter comes, we get as far as we can, and then the snow clears, and we get back on them. And so these are the first couple that we tackled this year. And we just stack up the work right after that, working on designing for the next phase to come after that. So we try to keep the design in the right of way a year or two ahead of the construction. And those are just the two that we're on now.
Yeah, and the overall picture here is, I think we've been a little ahead of schedule, if you will, on capital projects in general. If you do a trailing 12-month analysis, our utility plant is up 5%. That's a great year for us. And so projects like the ones highlighted here and others that folks are familiar with over the last year, we've been getting the work done and seeing that growth in our total utility plant as a result. All right, and before we leave this slide, we have to take advantage of this wonderful picture. I want to celebrate Elizabeth as one of 3 extraordinary women of the year. And one of your co-awardees is now the new president at Fort Lewis College. Yeah, so.
And we should mention that Rachel Landis is also
Mhm.
one of the 18 nominees.
Oh, really fun night to celebrate all those accomplishments. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. I've got 3 things here that I wanted to highlight. The second check mark is one of the ways that we're tackling the red zone problem in parts of our service territory. Looking at a couple of immediate options, which is you move to non-export. So that's a great immediate option that you can certainly put in play, which we've done. I'll let Dan talk a little bit about that, as well as how it ties into our on-site storage options. So Dan.
Yeah, so what we're pointing out here is that we are now allowing non-export systems to be added. That still compounds our problem because it takes away loading that was there to absorb the generation. So that's why we were hesitant on that. But in working through a few, we've decided that will probably be fairly limited in scope on what that was. We've got 4 of them that have taken advantage of that at this point, that were sort of on the fringe and asking us about that. And that's why we really took a deeper dive and looked into those. I would expect more to come. It really affects the payback of the system if you can't export out, but and basically keep using the grid as that free battery bank. But that's sort of what the problem ends up being. The other thing I really want to highlight that wasn't ready at the time to publish this, but we did get some of the results back from NREL on some of the bench testing that we did, and took things up to different levels, seeing how the concerns we had with the transmission relays would react. We do have some leeway to push back through the transmission system to a limited degree. It wasn't necessarily right then and there, so that's gonna allow us to open up a couple more substations here really soon with Sunnyside and Rock Creek that have the two big solar arrays right at the substation, whereas the rest of the substation isn't that packed. So that's gonna open some things up, and then we have another item we're working on here too that hoping to create even a little more headroom, but it's likely gonna require battery banks to accompany solar arrays going in once we reach that 100% of load being met type of levels on those. So, but our goal here is to not tell somebody no, but a yes, but. Yes, and, sorry, yes, and.
That's improv rules, that's right. Yes, and.
Yeah.
So Dan, on the non-export solar, so those have to be in pretty remote areas. It's like if you were in Turtle Lake, you couldn't do that, right? I mean, in that little subdivision around Turtle Lake.
Well, let me explain what non-export means, is that you're putting a solar array on your house, just like you would anyways. If you have your load turned on, you're charging your car during the middle of the day, the sun's up, that's all fine. But if you're starting to generate more than you use, the inverter's not gonna let it push back onto the grid and spin the meter backwards. And so it's location independent. It could be in the middle of town, it could be in a very remote area, but it's gonna be an area that has met its quota on the load that's out there, where the generation is starting to exceed the load in these constrained areas.
I mean, if someone wanted to do that in the red zone in Durango, they could do that?
Yes, yes, that's exactly what we're saying. Otherwise you wouldn't do this.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And then you mentioned Rock Creek Solar Array.
Yeah, we have a
where's
Rock
that?
Creek substation, so it's near, you know
Oh,
where Oxford is.
substation. Oh, right, okay, yeah.
You know where Oxford is, that's
Yeah.
where the tribe has a 1 megawatt array
Oh, they do.
out there that's interconnected to our Rock Creek substation.
All right, other questions? Yeah.
You mentioned this is kind of the first tranche of information from the NREL, so is there more coming, or is it more just about analyzing?
Yeah, great information, or great question. It is, Ryan Wagner went up there last week and did the witness testing and saw what all happened. We still want to push the limits a little further. It's like, okay, they're working 4, we'll work at 6, we'll work at 10. So we're looking a little deeper on those things. And then we still have other work engaged with them as far as these screens that are in place that have caused us to put these limits in, understanding the why behind those screens. It's like they say, don't go past this level. Well, why? Was that because these screens were developed way back when people were interconnecting rotating machinery? And the limit is really more based around that as opposed to an inverter-based resource. So just trying to understand the why a little better on that. And that was, we'll talk a little bit here, maybe on the next slide or so, about the grant that we got from NREL, which is that.
And Director Winchell has a.
Hey, thank you. Yeah, so are we characterizing the non-export as a temporary solution? While we remediate the red zones, or are we characterizing this as a long-term solution? Because
it is a solution that's only gonna get better. So this will be something that's allowed right now. And then the next step is gonna be a flexible charging schedules that when the inverters have that, we will be able to narrow down when you can't export as opposed to saying no export. It'll be, okay, just no export in the months of April and October between the hours of 11 and 3 or something like that. And then when that's there, then you accompany batteries with that, and the non-export becomes less of an issue.
so I'm on board with that approach. I mean, I think it is the long-term solution here, but we need to be very careful about the messaging to include that additional thought. If this goes out as a, non-export is not a solution, right? As a standalone, and if it gets out in the world that we're treating it as a solution, that will reflect very badly on all of us. We need to explain that there's some real engineering that's happening here. This is not a policy matter. We are solving the problem, and we're solving it in stages, because if there's not confidence that that there's a way to capture the midday value of the energy, it just deeply undermines the value of an investment in home solar. So, I mean, I know you know this, and I know Chris, but it's important that we package that up carefully. Thank you.
John, thank you. That's a great reminder. And I think you said it exactly right, which is just doing the real engineering. We're so lucky to have this NREL relationship that gives us what is essentially a digital twin of our system. We can, push the limits and see where the line needs to be drawn from a physics standpoint and operational standpoint. But you're exactly right. We don't want to undermine the messaging of the value here of folks wanting to do these investments.
And are the inverters that are used for these original 4, are they gonna be able to, are they the same inverters that they're gonna be able to use as things change? Or are they gonna have to change inverters? Yeah,
It should be firmware related.
okay,
I don't know exactly what type of inverter somebody put on. One recently came in that was attached to our system, that put it in a red zone. We said it had to be operated non-export, and the inverter that they chose couldn't even do that basic functionality because of the very cheap inverter they bought.
okay. So I got really good guidance from LPA when I put in my system and, have it, make sure it does this kind of stuff. So I'm sure we've got that information out there, but there's nothing we can do to force people to
Right. Some don't
to
even
read it,
install
much less do it. That's too
The
bad.
local installers are gonna know. We're communicating with them.
Okay,
They know. But there's a lot of others who get installed.
okay. Oh, from, not necessarily a home job, it's somebody from outside.
It could be both, either one. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and it does also highlight, I think, the kind of free consultant we offer every member on this front. I mean, it's super valuable. If, homeowners, businesses are looking at, solar, batteries, other electrification options, right? We've got this incredible team that Dan runs to provide that help. But unfortunately, some folks don't take us up on it.
I have one more question in this line, unless somebody's, and this isn't for you, actually, this is for us. So we're going through a lot of effort, and it's good effort to try to get people so that they can have these systems. So basically, we're saying, setting people up so we don't have to sell them electricity, which is what we're in the business of doing. Unless we change our business and say we're in the service business and we'll service, so we make this all work together. We make what's it called? Rooftop, thank you very much. We make rooftop and we make, all work with all of our energy. So as we think about our strategic planning as we're going ahead, I think we need to take a hard look at our business model, because we're encouraging people to use less electricity, to make more of their own electricity. Some benefication. Benefication's good, don't you
I've
think?
used that one.
Okay, good, it's not just me. And I'm on my home turf and don't mess around. Is, yes, we might bring some load on, but in general, I don't see us bringing enough load on. I don't know. So I want all of us to be thinking about, we're working really hard at this. To your point, it's free consulting that is not free, so any of our members can say, hey, but we're taking up this time and effort to get people to buy less of our product.
Well, I would say I see it slightly differently, because
Okay.
beneficial electrification is electrify more things
Right.
so that we can sell more electricity. So I don't think we're undermining our business model by helping our members do this different types of work. And the other thing I would say is we are forecasting organic load growth here. I don't see this, the relatively small amounts that are being done. I don't see undermining our general business model. And this probably is echoes of the conversation we had last month about base charges. That is a big part of our revenue, is base charges, for the reasons that we're all familiar with. Doing this type of work obviously doesn't undermine our base charges. So I think this will allow us to continue to fine tune that and continue that discussion we had just last month.
And last month we decided to not nudge base charges up more than we had. So we said, okay, we're gonna keep them low because, you know, we're more into the electricity selling than we are into the service. So as we think forward in the next, and I'm talking about over the next 5 years, I'm not saying we're doing this now, but, you know, guys, we're strategy, so let's be thinking.
So yeah, it's good to draw those threads together. All right, one other thing I want to mention, or two other things on this slide. Check mark number 3, which is of course the Mercuria agreement that was completed last month after board approval at our last meeting. And the great news we had coming out of that, which is that we actually had wholesale prices that were lower than our existing contracts. So feel like that was a successful negotiation and outcome with that bridge period to the first part of 2028. The other thing I want to mention on this slide is the top of the second column. This is something everyone knows I'm very passionate about the RTO issue and how we integrate into our region and how that drives value for our membership. Big milestone in that journey was the FERC approval of the SPP West tariff. That is kind of the baseline. Until that thing is approved, there is no SPP West. But now that that's in place, that process can continue forward. So I want to highlight that important milestone in the regionalization discussion. Any questions on this slide? Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a couple. Could you, on the, I guess it's the 4th check mark, staff began risk training with Energy Authority. Could you, we talked a little bit about safety, and then this is a totally different idea. This is financial risk.
Yes.
So can you just explain that a little bit for,
Yeah, so as folks will remember, we've engaged TDA on 2 separate pieces of work. One is the RFP process that we kicked off together last month. That is on the street. Happy to talk about that if folks want. This is the other part of the work that we're doing with TDA, which is putting in place proper procedures around financial risk abatement and mitigation. And as we are participating in a power market in the future, we want to be ready for that. And so that's really what this line is referring to. We had our first kind of internal staff training with their experts to kick off that process. The board will be seeing more of that over the coming months.
And this is basically training staff, protecting, there'll be parameters put down on, okay, here's our risk tolerance on buying power in these situations.
Yeah.
And this is, we're a couple of years out for this.
That's right. Yeah, we kicked this off early to anticipate, possible scenarios for us in 28 and beyond. We are, I think, in a position where we're gonna have the vast majority of our needs, as well as any export in the future. We're gonna have that contracted out long-term, but there will be a small increment that will be traded on a more short-term basis, meaning 1 day to 6 months is thinking of that as short-term. And we just want to make sure we have the right procedures in place to handle that relatively small amount of our total demand.
Okay. And then just on the next check mark, the generation injection study. So this would play into our capital projects and where we're gonna put facilities. I guess I didn't quite understand.
Joe, this is slightly different. This is us looking at our current ability to move power around our system, but also potentially in and out of our system, and making sure we understand what our current capacity looks like. There are scenarios where we can have excess generation in our service territory, so we got to figure out, do we have enough pipe, so to speak, to get it out, enough wires to get it out? There are scenarios where we might need to import during certain parts of the year or a day. And what is our ability to do that? And really trying to think ahead about those different scenarios. Dan and his team have been working hard on this. We've been cooperating very closely with our neighbors in every direction to understand that transfer capability so that we're ready for different scenarios as they start to develop. But Dan, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, and part of this is preparation for the RFP. So we're going to be getting projects in, and we're going to be putting together portfolios and say, how does this look? And Before that, we wanted maybe one little litmus test of what's gonna be feasible. I don't wanna build up a portfolio that includes 200 megawatts of generation within our service territory if I can only move 150 around. So this is sort of giving us the real high level view of what that looks like. So we can wisely select the projects and then do a more detailed study. And the issue is that it involves more than just our system, because there will be times when it reaches out beyond our system, and we have to see how that looks. So,
Thank you.
Tim, we see you.
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Can you remind me when the RFP closes?
yeah, June 2nd.
June 2nd?
Yes.
Thanks. And then on this, there's a note that we made progress on a master agent agreement and or a meter agent agreement. And I just was curious what that is. What's a meter agent?
That's a good question. So, SPP wants to know how much energy they're providing us for transmission capacity. It's basically the wholesale meters that come into our service territory. So Tri-State's always been reading those meters in the past. They were their meters, and they would use those meters to bill us. And now these are gonna be our meters, but there has to be certain certifications that you have to meet to be a meter reading agent, submit that into the SPP portals, have a product called MB90 that is more of the industry standard software that does a lot of this stuff. Pretty costly, so we are, looking for third parties that do that for us.
And are these like, do they require a physical person to go read a meter, or is it electronic?
No, it's all remote.
All right.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
We have
Thank
the
you.
technology, Tim.
Yep. In fact, it has to be remote.
Yeah.
They read these every day, and even some of them have to be real time. That's where we have, if it's over a megawatt, we have our SCADA connected to it also, so that everybody knows what's going on real time.
And does that require us to acquire new software or anything like that, or new technology, or do we just acquire what Tri-State currently uses?
Yeah, some of that's why the meter agent has to have that software and that capability and that licensing. We do have the real-time stuff is something that we are handling in-house through our SCADA system. And there's modules within our SCADA system that accommodate those standards.
So, I mean, an error in this activity could be pretty costly, it seems like, right? Could have a underage or overage and or whatever. So looking at these third parties, are there kinds of certifications or I mean, how do they get licensed by SPP or whatever?
Yeah, that's exactly right. There's you have to have a meter agent qualification from SPP to be able to do this. We've looked at Mercuria doing it. It's likely honestly going to be Tri-State that does this for us and reads those meters, because they're going to have access and read those anyway as part of being the transmission owner and operator in the area. And so they're probably going to be reading the meters that they've always read. We're buying their meters from them, and then they continue to read those. We verified that through something called ICCP, which is the real-time SCADA interface. And then we can check and verify everything through that.
And so we would be paying Tri-State to be our agent, and they do that?
Right, we're working through these agreements now.
Potentially, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, thank you for the explanation. Very helpful.
And just, thanks, Tim, for asking the question about RFP close. What's our timeline expectation after that? What will staff do after staff and TEA after June 2nd? And then what's the next time you think that the board will see something?
I'd have to look up our presentation. Greg had a timeline in there. Let me look at that and I'll get back with you, unless you know off the top of your head, Amanda, because you probably stared at more than I do.
Not right now.
Yeah, I'll just go look it up. I appreciate
Okay.
it. Yeah.
There is a timeline and it talks about the injections from the board.
Yeah. Go ahead, Rachel.
I was just curious about the DOE's resubmittal instructions. for the PTO. So is
Yes.
that saying we have to fully resubmit, or is this the next phase? Like if we still have the grant, what's going on there?
Yeah, several moving pieces, over the last few weeks. The good news is we have done the resubmission. We are back right where we were in the queue. We are waiting for loan documents to be finalized and sent to us. We have been assured that nothing has changed, and so we're in a good spot. But Dan, anything to add?
No, it's just like the feedback we've gotten is we're in a better position than just about any other co-op in the nation on being able to rack them to move on this.
Thank you.
I bet you say that to all the co-ops.
It could be, but no, we really do have a purely shovel-ready project ready to go. And some of these others are, well, it depends on supply chain, and it depends on tariffs, and it depends on this and that, and we're very isolated.
Yeah. All right, let's head to the next slide. This is just kind of a timeline summary for everyone. This gives a kind of a nice single picture of the next few periods for us, major periods in our work. As was mentioned, we're in the middle of the RFP right now. That will close June 2nd, and we've shared the timeline previously of how that will then come back to the board for different steps as we get that information in and analyze the submissions. We've talked about the bridge period of Mercuria that is now signed and finalized after board approval last month. And that takes us from April 26th to middle of 28. And then that next period of working on energy independence, local projects, regional projects, different things we get in through the RFP will be part of that evaluation, as well as our PPAs that we've already finalized with Tri-State, which are about 30% of our demand, which takes us through the end of 2033. And then continuing to work on the PPAs, kind of almost think of it as like different layers, right? We're just stacking up different pieces, putting the puzzle together day by day, year by year, to make sure we're covering all of our energy needs and doing it with most affordable and lowest emissions as we possibly can. That's the puzzle we're going to be solving together. And this chart is meant to just kind of put it in blocks for you to break it into smaller bite-sized pieces. So, any questions on the timeline?
I don't, with the June 2nd RFP, Tri-State published their ERP and their preferred method on April 11th, or at least had to send it to PUC. And there are 11 co-ops who are working on bring their own resource programs at Tri-State. And one of the things that came up at the annual meeting for them, and it might apply to us, is that there was some anticipation that once those vendors got selected for the ERP, that the non-winners would be more available for us. Are we seeing any of that? I mean, it's pretty early. I mean, it was just April 11th, but are we seeing anything freeing up?
So I don't know about that specifically because it's hard to know what's going on, but after the first week of the RFP on the street, we've had 231 views of the RFP, 2 added to their watch list and 9 that said they intended to bid.
Okay.
And none of those 9 are the ones that I know also intend to bid.
Yeah.
So like a lot of the local.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, like these 9, I don't even recognize the names on necessarily. Maybe some of these are the ones you're talking about. I don't know.
So the timing on your injection generation, that's got to be figured out before we start accepting RFPs, obviously, because we got to figure out, can we even do what they're saying?
Right, there's gonna be multiple phases and iterations to this, so there's gonna be people to make the short list, and we're gonna negotiate with them a little more simultaneously while, you know, the first layer of injection study is just gonna say, oh, you can handle up to 150 megawatts.
Okay.
Maybe not exactly where,
Okay.
and then we start getting a little more granular and say, what about here, here, and here, and they run that again and say either, yeah, no problem, or yes, and you need to do this, these system improvements. And that's likely what's gonna come to some of those. And so that's where we have to make the decision of what is the most economic overall portfolio to us. You know, we could do all this local. Maybe it requires a system upgrade, a reconductor, a new substation. Or we take another route where we have maybe less internal to our system, and we take from a project that's in the Four Corners of comes through Craig or something like that, which would involve no interconnection. And so these will all depend on how the bids come in, and we're really eager to see what those look like.
Yeah, you all are great. Thank you, sir.
All right. We're gonna go to the next slide. Community partnerships. A couple of things I wanted to highlight here. One, because of the following board's directive on online voting, we are very happy to have that launched and ready for our members to utilize. And Amanda and her team are working very hard on that. So I want to turn it over to her for detail.
Sure, so just a reminder that online voting will open at 8 a.m. on Monday, April 21st. It will close at noon on May 20th. So that's online voting. Members can access their ballot through their Smart Hub portal. So that's how you can get in there. And then the mailed ballots will still be mailed to all members, except that about 300 who have opted out of a paper ballot. And those will start to arrive in mailboxes by April 21st. And those will be due back to either our 2 new ballot drop boxes. So there are 2 green ballot boxes, one outside of the Durango office and one outside of the Pagosa office. So folks can drop off their completed ballots by 4 p.m. on May 20th. Or they can have them mailed back to our third-party election facilitators. They need to be received also by 4 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time on May 20th. So just a reminder about voting. We've got a lot of information out there for our members to help navigate. Please let me know if you have questions.
I have 2 members that came up to me and said that they didn't make the deadline for checking in for online voting.
Sure.
That's not true, right? You can
That's
still,
not true.
you can still check in and do it.
Absolutely, and I wonder if we did have an April 3rd deadline to opt out of a paper ballot, but there never was a deadline to opt in for online voting. So members will be able to vote online, provided they have a Smart Hub account. So you must have your Smart Hub account ready to go. And you can vote at any time from 8 a.m. on Monday until noon on May 20th.
So I think there's some confusion out there with those 2 things.
Okay,
Thank you.
I appreciate that. Thanks, Paul. Joe, did you?
You said 300 people have opted out.
Of paper ballots.
All right. The second thing I want to highlight. Oh, okay. Go ahead, Tim.
Thank you. So I'm curious to what degree there will be instructional information and the frequency of sort of providing that instructional information during this time on how you can access the ability to do online voting, right? It's all new. Many people might not even have a Smart Hub, account. How do you sign it up? How do you find it? I think a step-by-step, if it's not already out there, I don't recall having seen it. I think that's really critical for, I already have people saying, I'm not even sure how I would do that, So inform me, if you will, where I am missing something or what the plan is.
Yeah, Tim, really, really good question. So we do have the information to the degree that is recommended to have online to maintain the integrity and security of conducting online voting. So we have been advised to not put a lot of the information, Tim, to your point about step-by-step on our website for fear of tampering with the election. So it is ill-advised to put forth a step-by-step. To directly answer your question, but Tim, we do have, we're trying to navigate, the bottom line is you log into your Smart Hub account and there will be a giant Vote Now button on the top of your screen during the voting period. And so it's pretty darn user friendly, but I do appreciate that question. And we, in partnership with the election supervisory committee and our third party election facilitators. We have the amount of information out there that they're comfortable giving.
And if someone doesn't have, if someone
Hey,
says,
Joe.
"Wow, sign up for oh, I'm sorry, Tim, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I think I still have the floor here, but correct me if I'm wrong, Ted. And,
Go for it.
you know, I don't know about the security aspect of it. This is the first I've kind of heard of that. But, I mean, someone will create that anyway, somewhere along the line, potentially, right? By following their own third party, experience. I don't know. Is this, I would like to know more. It doesn't have to be right here about what those communications look like and how we're going to be distributing them. And I think there's a potential for confusion. I've already heard some. And I'd like to know what we're doing to make sure we're reducing that and getting a great voter turnout. So.
And I would also add, we also don't put a step-by-step on the paper ballot. So we also don't put the ballot, the physical ballot looks like. And so this is following the same security protocol that we deployed for paper balloting. And so we're looking to really to our third-party experts in deferring. But Tim, I've taken a note, and let me see what I can wrangle for the board to take a look at.
Maybe we're discussing different ideas of step by step, and I apologize I'm not there, but the idea, I mean, the paper ballot comes with instructions on how to complete it, put it in the envelope, return it, sign it. That seems like step by step to me. And in terms of the use of Smart Hub, for somebody who's never used it, even just downloading it, setting it up, right, and opening it. And I'm not asking them to, I'm not suggesting we tell them, vote for A or B or whatever, but here's how you access it. Here's how you provide it. And then information about you can't vote in both places. So again, I assume that's coming. I'm concerned that maybe it's not. So I would like to hear more about it. And I seem to be the only one here. So if that's the case, I'll be quiet. Thanks.
Welcome back, you guys. I know in my little corner of the world at the bakery, sometimes I'll say, well, just put a sign up. People, but signs just go past you. Once you see too many of them, you don't see them anymore. So I know I get 3 or 4 things. I think I get 3 or 4 things a week from LPDA, and it's really cool. But if I wasn't on the board, I don't know that I would be reading them. So I really appreciate you sending them out. And I think you're in between a rock and a hard place of do it more, no, do it less, do it more. Oh, you're losing folks. So I don't know what to do. I want to acknowledge the difficulty. I want to acknowledge the importance of, yes, let's tell people how to get there. And the one big button is the one thing we need to tell them about is, so the one big button is their version of getting the thing in the mail, right? So that one big button, then it tells you how to go forward in the same way. Once you get the thing in the mail, it tells you how to go forward. But we're not publishing, and this is what it's gonna look like after you get the big button. And I totally understand that. So thank you for that. And bravo for trying. Or bravo, pardon, bravo for trying.
Hey, Tim, we lost you at the last second there. So was there anything else you wanted to tack on?
Yeah, I think you guys dropped. Both Dan and I lost you. So anyway, no, I don't have anything else. I think I made my point. Appreciate it. Thanks for listening.
Okay, thank you. Onward.
Okay, all right, one other thing to highlight here, always love this piece of news. We've awarded almost $90,000 in scholarships to 5 high school seniors to help support their post-secondary work. The recipients were selected on merit based, and a volunteer committee helped us do that with 7 representatives from our service territory. So I always love to highlight that great piece of news every year as our incredible local high school seniors head off to college or other post-secondary opportunities.
Chris, I would also add, all of those students will be attending the annual meeting, and so you'll have a place at that event.
Great job with community engagement on that one. And then we did just get some feedback from one of the folks on the review committee to perhaps re-examine our scholarship criteria and then division of merit, potentially adding a need-based component to that as well.
Oh, what component?
Need-based, so both merit and financial need.
Thank you, need, wasn't getting the word need,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you.
There was a, yeah,
Go ahead.
I think I was gonna say what you were gonna say. There was a request that we re-clarify where the funding for scholarships comes from.
Yes, happy to do that. Amanda?
Yep, they come from unclaimed capital credits. So that's one of the benefits of being a non-for-profit utility. We get to give that money and reallocate it back to students in our service.
Cool. So that money goes to scholarship, it also goes to, no, it doesn't go to round, oh, it goes to the education part of Roundup, is that correct? Okay.
Yes.
That's, and then Roundup, the non-education part of Roundup is where people actually are able to round up on their bills. Super, and that money gets figured out. Thank you so much. I always get confused, I need those reminders.
And for reference, the scholarship guidelines are exhibit 1 to policy 203.
Well, I'll just look back.
Thank you for that on the spot reference. Yeah.
Onward.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Following.
All right. First of all, I cannot tell why I forget about YouTube until like it's absolutely vital. But I was on there the other day and I was looking for videos and I found one video about Pagosa Homes. Is there multiple?
There are 3.
I think so.
Okay, I'll have to go look for those some more. We already said congratulations to Elizabeth, so congratulations again. So there was a coffee and Chris and Pagosa as well. It's not listed, but we did have what, about 15 people maybe? Yeah.
So this is March.
In April.
Yeah, the dashboard's March.
It
So-
was in March. It was March 27th or something like that. I looked, I went and I looked in my phone just to make sure that I wasn't wrong on that.
We're off that
Anyway.
day.
Drinks a lot of coffee, Chris.
I know.
It was like April 7th, I'm pretty sure, 'cause we were, March 27th was spring break.
I went to something on March 27th and I don't know what it was. Okay.
It's April.
Sorry about that.
Tonight too.
Yeah.
Hey,
All right,
you
back to
guys,
Holly. Back to
I
Holly.
just want to tell all of you, thank you. Board meeting here in Pagosa in Archuleta County was in 2000 couple of years, but I do understand what it's like to make that drive over here. It's beautiful, but it's also challenging sometimes, so thank you guys. I've seen you over here more in 5 months than I saw over here in the 5 years before that. It means a lot. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Yeah, I'd like to echo that sentiment. I've never felt such a strong LPA presence ever since I lived in Pagosa. Like in terms of everything you and Amanda are doing, with getting in the paper, responding to things, being here. And at that coffee event, it was, I mean, I saw minds be changed. And these are people who are going to go talk to their people. So it's, I know you have so much on your plate, and I really appreciate both you and Amanda, what you guys have done.
Still yours, Holly.
Oh, no, that was it. Thank you so much.
All right.
Yeah, thanks everyone. I'm just so grateful for the board support every time we get here. So it's Tim here.
Yes, Tim.
Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, I couldn't hear a lot of that conversation that it was garbled, so maybe this was already answered, but I was just curious about the video update from Chris on our power supply progress. It's noted in that slide. I went to the website to find it, but I couldn't. So if someone could send a link to the board, that would be helpful. Thank you.
It was at the bottom of that press release. It's also on our homepage, but I'll send it to you, Tim, right now.
Maybe one
Great.
other thing is
Sorry,
high
go ahead.
school seniors that were named or that won it. Do we name them at all or anything? Do we put out is there a press release on that?
Oh, yeah.
Tim, we issued a press release on April 10th. That has a nice little bio and sort of explains the why behind each of the awards for each student, and we've got some nice photos. And so that's also on our website, and so I'm happy to link that out as well.
Tim, can you hear us?
Well, when it's not garbled because of connection issue, I think. I don't think it's on my end.
Okay.
Anyway, yeah, I'm so sorry if I'm asking repeated questions.
No, I could see you leaning in and I just wanted to make sure you could hear us when we
No,
aren't.
some of you are better than are louder than others. Thank you. Amanda's very faint, so it's hard to hear her.
Go ahead, Rachel.
Thank
I
you.
was curious with all of the community conversations and coffees, if there's any surprising themes or items coming forward just for board awareness.
Yeah, well, I take input from the whole room. I guess I'm sort of the one person who's been in every one of those rooms, but lots of you have been to join me at many of these events as well. I guess my observation is not surprises so much as just really trying to get more information out. My observation is that there's been some publications put out on social media that were completely wrong. The wrong information. And so I felt like it was really urgent to get in and then allow people to ask questions and follow-ups. And I think that has been, to me, the upside of doing these events. And it felt great about having, the first part of those meetings, 5-10 minutes. Hey, here's an update. Here's what's going on. Try to give as much information as I can. And then the second half of the meeting is really about conversation and back and forth. And so I guess I can't put my finger on, oh, that was a big surprise to me. But I do think there was a lot of misinformation that had been circulated. And so it felt like we really needed to get the good information out in the public.
And you're using that in past tense, but I would kind of.
Oh, it's infinite.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Ongoing.
I think I agree with the urgency and I think it's still out there. So thanks for setting the tone.
I think my surprise, if I may, Rachel, is how bloody friendly it is.
Yeah.
I guess I had some expectation because of what we see in the newspaper, that there are going to be folks, but the folks who were there asking questions were asking really good questions. And we're asking them very respectfully, and they were being answered respectfully, and I really appreciated that. I just was thinking that, somebody was gonna show up and just complain and not be willing to listen, and I see people listening, and I really appreciate that. So that was unexpected for me, a very pleasant one.
All right, folks, we're rounding the home stretch here. 2 slides to go. Really appreciate this conversation this morning about our March updates. The next slide is maintain strong financial health. Our friend Patrick is on vacation, so I'm going to be stepping in for him. He sent me some detailed notes to prepare for the meeting, so I'll do my best to answer questions that come up. But this is a good summary of kind of where we are. I did mention the cash reserves that was in our opening table. So I'm happy to follow there, folks. The one thing I did want to mention is we are just being expenses, and we've had a couple things kind of go our way. Weather has a big impact on us in a ton of different ways. One of the things that it does is if we have good weather, we typically have less overtime. We just have less interruptions and less time that the crews are out making those repairs and reconnections. We spent a lot less money on labor in March than our budget because of that. So yes, we had a little bit less in the way of electricity sales, but the savings on the labor costs and the fact that our wholesale costs are at a controllable level has meant that we actually had slight margin expansion last month. And so really positive financial picture for March. You can see that, that cash position improved. And that's one of the main reasons that it did. The other thing I would say is things like, the payroll differential, if you look at the numbers there, you'll see that our total payroll for the month was about $55,000 less than planned. And the weather had some upside for us in that sense. And we're also doing a really careful job of managing our travel and training budget for the year. We're about $100,000 ahead. So again, the things we can control, I can't control tariffs, I can't control the weather, but we have a lot of control over these day-to-day expenses and these sorts of costs. And I think we had a really positive March, and as a result, strong financial performance. So I'll do my best to answer any detailed questions. Patrick sent me a few extra notes, but I've tried to get through the highlights. And I know Tim might have some comments as well from our FAC meeting.
Questions, Kohler?
So on the financials, then, is that time to ask?
Yeah, it's great, please.
So I have this on page 127 of 142. I think that 142 might have changed. But it's a statement of operations. And one of the ones that caught me was the non-operating margins other. And we had forecast 209,000. We actually ended up with a negative 8,000. I can't figure out why you end up with a negative and what exactly goes into the non-operating margins.
I've got an answer for that one. Yes.
You did.
Yeah, ready for that one, Kohler. So I will, Patrick helped me with this one, sending some extra notes on that very question. So non-operating margins other, what is that? Well, the decrease is due to a catch-up in lease payments that were due to the BLM for the Chromo lease. We didn't realize that we had to pay those every year. I think initially we thought it was a one and done. It is not. That is an annual lease. And so we caught up with that. And that contributed to that variation. There was also a timing difference related to the FTC holdback. And we were forecasted to receive those funds in March, and we received them in February. So those are the two causes of the differentiation.
Okay. Yeah, so year to date, they're pretty close.
Yeah. Yeah, just some timing variance in there, and then the Chromo lease that we needed to get updated.
And that lease goes under non-operating margins. Why would that be?
Well, that might be a good question for our auditors of why it's categorized there. But I am happy to try to find out more about that definition for you. But I would need to do some homework.
Yeah, I see you, Tim.
You
there, Tim?
your video or your audio dropped off. So if you were waiting for me, sorry. Leases are capitalized. So that's probably why I went to margins. They're not recognized in the income statement, I believe. And I think you'll find some information in the audit report around those kind of leases. So trying to answer Kohler's question, but I'm probably nowhere as good as Patrick or Chris. So thanks.
Oh, all right, thanks for that. Any other questions, financial?
I still have some dashboard questions, but not.
All right, let's wrap financial. Any other slides?
We have one left. Yeah. Preparing for the future is our final slide here. There are two things that I want to highlight here. The bottom of the first column focused on broadband make-ready projects. As you folks know, we've got two main network operators in the region. We're trying to work on getting those pole attachments ready to go as quickly as we can to support that important work. So I wanted to let folks know that we've got a construction contractor that is totally focused on that. Make sure we've got no delays. The second thing I want to highlight is the top of the second column, which we talked a little bit about already with the NREL Dan, anything you want to add on that piece?
Yeah, only you'd ask why it's in here again. Last time it was, we applied for.
Oh, I
This
see.
time is we received.
Got it.
Yeah.
Even though I think we got news that we received it just the day before the board meeting
I
last
see.
time. So
Yeah.
that's why it sounds familiar.
Okay, thank you.
Is that in addition to the 100 hours that you were just awarded?
No, this is the.
This is it,
Yes.
okay. And I have a long question.
Walk away.
All right, good. So I'm curious about this Steve Smith, smart inverter testing.
He gave a presentation at Tech Advantage on that topic. Because even though smart inverters have been out there for a long time, there's volt bar settings that people could be using for a long time. Most utilities still aren't utilizing them.
Right.
And that's what's enabled us to tell a lot of people yes across our service territory without running into voltage issues.
Okay. I'm not an engineer, so I'm trying to figure this one out. Cause I ran into this idea last September. And so it's relatively new, is what you're saying. There's not a lot of use of this.
It's about 10 years, maybe between 5 and 10 years we've been using it.
Okay.
Other utilities haven't adopted it for one reason or another. They just haven't done it. This is a very important part to making our system operate and be able to allow the penetrations we have.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was going with the whole line of questioning, so, okay. I will have more questions on
All right.
this. But thank you.
Fuller?
Yeah, under that first check mark, Chris, it talks about you meeting with some of our fellow co-ops.
That was
Oh,
good.
And the one that's missing to me is the San Luis Valley, because I know we've done aid back and forth with them.
Yeah.
Is there a reason why they weren't included on this?
Well, so I do know Eric really well. So mutual aid, 1000%, and we still have that in place with them, so nothing has changed there. Still great neighbors with our friends to the east. This conversation that I was focused on with Dan's help and others was on kind of medium-term transmission options. We don't have connection to our east.
Okay.
And so it just made more sense to look more north-south, because that's, that ultimately that's who we're likely to cooperate with in the near term. Not to say someday, we'll put something through Nicole's backyard and we'll go over Wolf Creek Pass. I mean, anything is possible, but right now it's not a viable option.
Got it, thank you.
There you go.
Anything else on prepare for the future? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so Steve at Tech Advantage, I ran into him and I didn't get to see him present, but I'm really glad he was there. I think Ryan went too.
Yes.
Is that right? So that's great, and I think it's really important. It kind of goes back to something that you said about the controllable cost. I don't want to risk the skill advancement and education advancement of our staff because we need, $10,000, something here and there. It's super important, and I will preach to that more times than you would like to hear.
So I am right with you. It just felt like there were a couple that were less critical and we're able to capture some savings from that. But I am right with you.
Okay.
We want to make sure our staff is on the cutting edge and they're getting a chance to talk about their great work with our peers, our colleagues. We'll never cut that short.
I appreciate that. Thank you, sir.
All right. Well, those were, I guess, the end of my highlights. Lots of great conversation along the way. Always love to end with happy cows and happy to take any wrap-up questions on this section of the meeting. So back to you, Kirsten.
Yeah, so on page 14 of what I think is still the dashboard, at least it's the same colors. So it's when we talk about the rebates and how much in rebates and such. So I have a few questions on that. So residential LED was still on it, but I don't think we're doing residential LED, but it might have just started this month. Is that
We're
right?
still passing through the tri-state rebates.
Oh, they are
Tri-state
still
gets
passed
us,
through,
yes.
okay, cool. And are most of those, which of those that are on that slide, and I'm sorry, my computer's not working well, and, I don't know if we can have it up or not. Are tri-state, facilitated, rebates, and which of them are just ours?
Yeah. We're working through a strategy on that, because they're largely tri-states, especially now, because we know those are going to go away. And so to align with member expectations, we backed away somewhat from adding to the rebates this year. And then when
It's the same file with slide 14.
and then when tri-state drops off next year, we come back into the picture at a level that we were previously at to try to flatten that curve out. So
Okay.
is what we're doing. But I would say especially this year more than any other year, it's more tri-state than us.
Okay, okay. One of the things that Tri-State did a few years ago, and, oh yeah, Reg did, he's, what's his job there? He's like.
Innovative guy.
He's like, yeah, he's good, yeah. But Dan's better.
Yeah.
Is they looked at all of the rebates and said, okay, what's good? What are the ones that are good for both the member and the utility? And they kept those, and the ones that really were hurting the utility, which means it hurts members who weren't able to take advantage of it, they kind of backed away from some of those. So as you're looking at there's sort of a cost benefit analysis, and you were looking at as we move forward, I'm guessing.
New information from somebody else must be listening. No more residential LED rebates, Tri-State cut it this year.
Okay,
So, there's that piece.
okay,
Now, Tri-State has requirements that they have to meet for the state energy efficiency measures too, and that's part of why they give the rebates they do as well. You know, it's not only long-term payback, it's somewhat of a requirement as well. You know, we're looking into what requirements LPA may have once we are there and looking into seeing if it's a number of meters served. It could be, you have to have more than 100,000 meters to fall under this other requirement as well. So, all of the rebates that LPA issues has a payback associated with it. It's an investment. If we're issuing a rebate for a water heater, we're looking at, we're trying to move that needle.
yeah.
And so we're selling more electricity. What margins do we make from a water heater? Now, you know, today we give rebates for lawn equipment and all those kind of things that, you know, you run the stats on those, it's not a lot of payback on, you know, so it's somewhat messaging, it's beneficial electrification messaging, but we want to have rebates that move that needle, that change behavior or create behavior that otherwise wouldn't be there. That's our true objective. So if it's like norm, if heat pumps just become the standard, like LED light bulbs are now, you don't need to be given a rebate for those.
Right.
So that's what we're paying attention to.
Okay. The thing about rebates is sometimes the behavior you're trying to change changes. So when I was a kid, so PSCO was our utility provider, and they were trying to not build that next plant.
Yeah.
So their whole thing was about reducing electricity and efficiency and blah, blah, blah. But then once that plant got built, then it was about using more electricity. So, and depending upon where our peaks are, we incent different times of the day. And when we were paying all energy, we didn't incent time of use at all because there was no reason to. It didn't help us at all. So those things change, and that's a hard message, you know, we spend all this time trying to get the message out, and then unfortunately we have to change the message, and it almost looks like a betrayal. And
You're
it's
right.
not a betrayal, but that's a tough one.
And that's why we taper and we look for the right opportunities and try not to yank the rug out for somebody. Give somebody plenty of notice ahead of time saying, hey, this year we'll be doing it. This is a 1 year only, you know, so that creates a different behavior as well.
So I gotta step in because we do have auditors are online and absolutely, I know you were holding questions until this point of the meeting and remind me, because I don't want to lose your questions, but I also don't want to lose our auditors.
Okay, that's fine. I went in more detail than I mentioned. Thank you so much for catching me.
All right, so then we'll wrap up staff presentation and move into auditor presentation.
It's great. Well, thank you, everyone, and I wanted to introduce our friends from Jackson Thornton, our new auditors this year. They have completed their work and are happy to join us to relay their findings to the board. I believe we have Woody online. And Woody, a very warm welcome to you. Thanks for your patience as we wrapped up that agenda item. And over to you.
Can I just jump in to set expectations? Either maybe maybe this is a Chris question, maybe it's definitely a Patrick question, but I'm either gonna pass it to Tim or Chris. We're gonna get some information here. What is the expectation from the board post this information?
Yeah, so we set up about half hour, block meeting to be able to have the auditor share their, which of course is months of work. There's guidance for questions. If the board wants to do more, of course we can. It's your discretion. But we think that 30 minutes would be enough to do the presentation and the discussion.
So no action required out of this.
We have a resolution.
Yeah, there is a resolution to accept the audit.
Okay,
That is a very, yeah.
that's all I was trying to get to, so be prepared for that. Sorry to interrupt.
And I'd like to just set a couple of ground rules really quickly on this, right? First off, if the board has any questions that involve analysis of staff, you can have an executive session and excuse the staff for that, but also for executive session on page 6. And so Woody, this is sort of for you too. On page 6 does contain some information that is subject to a confidentiality agreement with a third party. So if we're going to do any discussion on page 6 of the report, that will need to be in executive session as well. Does that make sense? Okay.
I think so. I just want to make sure I understand. You're talking about the which statement you're talking about there.
Statements of changes equity.
Okay.
It's page 6 at the bottom. It's identified as page 6 at the bottom right corner.
Okay. All right. I'm with you. So at this point, are y'all ready for me?
Yeah, thank you. Over to you.
All right. And just so you guys know, we have been having some audio difficulties in hearing you guys. It's been jumbled up from time to time. So if my audio cuts out for any reason, feel free to stop me, and I can certainly repeat anything on my end. But just to kind of introduce myself and introduce my firm, I'm Woody Trimble with Jackson Thornton, and I've had the privilege my 24 years here to be able to work exclusively on utilities and performing audit procedures on utilities, and primarily electric utilities. So we understand your industry. We understand the lingo that's discussed. And so I've tried to share my screen. Hopefully you guys are able to see it. If I have the financial statements on my screen, and I get a thumbs up from Chris, so you guys can see it. So I'm gonna start by jumping right into the financial statements, and I promise. I think Chris said he was gonna limit me to 30 minutes, so I'll have to cut my 3-hour presentation back just a little bit. But that was just a little bit of attempt at humor, so I apologize. But jumping into the financial statements, I'm gonna kind of highlight as I talk here to kind of make it easy to follow. Hopefully this is large enough for you guys to see. But basically page number 1 is our opinion. And the first part of this section includes our opinion. And I'll share with you the second paragraph. And it states, in our opinion, the 2024 financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the association as of December 31st, 2024, and the results of its operations, its cash flows for the years then ended in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the USA. That long sentence basically states you have a clean opinion on your financial statements, and that's exactly what you're looking for your auditor to provide when doing an audit of your financial statements. And then obviously the prior year financial statements were audited by other auditors who also expressed an unmodified opinion on the financials. So this is a clean opinion. This is exactly what you're looking for when you have an auditor perform the audit of your financial statements. So moving on within the financial statements, I'm gonna jump right into the balance sheet that's on page number 3, and it begins with a snapshot of the numbers at December 31st, 2024 as compared to 2023. And I'm going to start at the top up here with your electric plant and service at $335 million. That's an increase of $15 million from last year. And that's due to normal additions of $16 million, less about $500,000 of disposals this year. Your next line, your construction work in progress, you can see is up to 14.5 million. That's a $5.6 million increase over last year. And some of the larger projects that are in that 14 million this year relate to the Bayfield and Pagosa transformer work, as well as the Anemus Valley rebuild of a transformer as well. That the combination of those two are just over $7 million. So that makes up nearly half of your construction work in progress outstanding at December of 2024. Next, your accumulated provision for depreciation at $172 million. That's a $9 million increase over last year. That's just due to normal depreciation of $11 million, less removal cost and disposals of about $2 million, accounting for the net increase there. Your next bold section, your investments at cost, you see are at $81 million this year. That's an increase of just under $4 million. That's due to you receiving allocations of capital credits of about $5.5 million this year, less about $1.6 million of those being paid in cash. And by far the largest allocation came from Tri-State this year of $4.6 million. That accounted for the majority of the increase in your investments. The third bold section here is your current assets. It begins with your cash and cash equivalents. So you'll notice your cash is down to $9.8 billion, a $6 million decrease. And we'll go over that here in a minute when we look at the statement of cash flows. Your second line here, your accounts receivable from your customers, you see is down to $2.7 million. That's about an $800,000 decrease over last year. And so a lot of that has to do with consumption. You actually sold less kilowatt hours in December of 24 as compared to December of 23. So in December of 24, you sold about 83 million kilowatt hours compared to December of 23 of about 90 million. So that accounted for the decrease in your overall receivables from your customer. The last section here, your deferred debits, your other deferred debits down here at 2.2 million. That's a decrease of 1.3 million. And if you'll remember, you deferred some charges related to contingency payments related to the sale of the subsidiary. And those some contingency payments were received this year, which caused the decrease in this particular line of $1.3 million. So looking over at the next page, your equities and liabilities. Starting at the top, your patronage capital at $158 million. That's an $8.3 million increase over last year. And that's due to net margins of La Plata of 10.8 million, less capital credit retirements of about 2.4 million. Your next section here is your long-term debt, down to $92 million. $4 million decrease is just due to normal principal payments on the debt. There was no new debt drawn down this year. The next section, your current liabilities, your accounts payable here includes your purchase power invoice from Tri-State. Of that 8 million, 6.2 million is related to the Tri-State invoice, and the Tri-State invoice last year at this time was 6.3 million. So about $100,000 decrease in your power bill this year. And then lastly, deferred credits, up to $24 million this year. That's a $2.3 million increase. If you'll remember, you elected to defer $2.6 million of the Tri-State rate increase that you had kind of put in effect early in the year. And so that was deferred here. And again, it was offset by some contingency payments related to the sale of the subsidiary that were received during the year as well. So the next page is your income statement, basically your statement of revenues, showing at the top, starting with your operating revenues of $109 million. That's a decrease of just under $2 million from last year. Again, consumption was the primary reason for that. You sold 878 million kilowatt hours this year compared to about 928 million kilowatt hours last year. So overall, you had about a 4% decrease in consumption this year. So that also generated less power cost under operating expenses. You see your power costs were at 67 million, again down 2 million. Again, you purchased less power from Tri-State for that same reason. A lot of these operating expenses that have increased, like your distribution cost and your maintenance of distribution plant, Labor cost increased some this year. And so that's the primary driver for some of these, as well as property taxes increased, as well as some of your fleet cost. Specifically for maintenance of distribution plant, there was a new right-of-way contractor included this year that helped drive that cost up some. And then lastly, your administrative in general up to 7.4 million, $600,000 increase. You did contract with a purchasing agent, and then you also had some legal costs incurred looking into some tax credits this year, and so that's where those costs were recorded. Your interest expense you see is down to 3.7 million, which is expected with the decrease in your overall debt balance. You'll see your generation and G&T and other capital credits up to 5.5 million this year. Again, had a $4 million increase from Tri-State all on its own this year. So that left operating margins of 8.6 million compared to 7.4 million last year. You look at non-operating margins, your other income, you see is a positive of 1.4 million this year compared to a deficit of 4.3 million last year. If you remember last year, you recognized a loss related to the sale of the subsidiary of about $4.4 million. And this year you received a payment related to some of the contingencies of 1.3 million that's reflected in this year. So overall at the bottom, you had net margins of just under 10.8 million this year, compared to about 3.8 million last year. So moving on to the cash flow statement. This is just kind of showing the sources and uses of cash for the year, and it starts with your net margins from the income statement that we just discussed. Adds back some non-cash items like depreciation expense. You know, depreciation expense we didn't pay cash for this year. We paid cash as we purchased those assets in previous years. And likewise, we have some capital credit income that we didn't receive in cash. And so when you factor those things along with the changes in your operating assets and liabilities, your operations generated you $17.8 million of cash this year, compared to 13 million. And so this is a number I like to look at as far as looking at the financial health of an organization. This tells the reader that what you're in the business of doing related to providing power to your customers has generated you positive cash of just under $18 million. So it allows you to do some things below. You see, you invested $30 million in your plant this year. You paid down capital credits of 2.4 million. You did receive some contribution in aid of 8.4 million, and then you paid down your debt of 4.2 million. So overall, that resulted in a net decrease of $6 million in your cash position, leaving a cash position of $9.8 million at the end of the year. Now, the rest of the pages within these financial statements are the notes to the financial statements, and they provide a little more information about the numbers that I went over. You can't get from just reading the numbers themselves. And so note 1 is a summary of your significant accounting policies that starts on page 8, and that continues on through page 10. But there were no new accounting policies this year, so I'm not going to go over anything in note 1 in any detail. Note 2 talks about contract balances with your customers. This is just an informational disclosure, nothing of significance here. Note 3, starting on page 11, is a breakout of your utility plant and where those dollars are invested, as well as construction in progress and what the aid to construction balances are. Note 4 at the bottom shows a breakout of your investments reported at 81 million on the face of the financials. And the reader can see that nearly 74 million of that is with Tri-State, disclosed in note 4. Note 5 talks about your regulatory assets that you have set aside, gives the reader a little more information about the nature of those. Note 6 in the middle of the page shows your patronage capital and what's been assigned and what's assignable. Also lets the reader know that we retired capital credits at 2.4 million this year, and that our equity position is just under 54% compared to 52% in the previous year. Note 7 shows the detail of your long-term debt with CFC and the balance outstanding on that. And then when you flip over to page 13, it shows the maturities on that debt for the next 5 years. Also lets the reader know we have a line of credit agreement with CFC, but there was no outstanding balance as of the end of December of 24 or 2023. Then you have deferred credits. Again, things that have been set aside to be brought into rates at a future period. Gives the reader a little more information about those items, with the largest one being the rate stabilization deferred credit here. Note 9 at the bottom of page 13 lets the reader know we do have a 401k plan, and employer contributions to that plan were about $1.5 million this year. And then note 10 at the top of page 14 is just a generic disclosure about litigation, that we know that there's litigation that exists, but at this time there's nothing that has caused us to record any kind of contingent liability related to litigation. The next section talks about our power supply agreement with Tri-State, and that our liability to them was $6.2 million at the end of the year. And then lastly, we have filed a non-conditional notice of intent to withdraw. So that's informational here as well for the users of these financial statements. Note 11 talks about any significant estimates and concentrations. Obviously, you have a concentration of buying your power from Tri-State. You do have one customer that accounted for 16% of operating revenues this year. Also lets the reader know about your being self-insured, as well as your labor agreement. And then lastly, note 12 talks about subsequent events, and subsequent events would be things that have happened after December 31st of 2024 that would be pertinent to the users of these financial statements. And there were no such items, so there's nothing disclosed here. So before I pause for questions, I want to go ahead and jump into this other report that I need to go through. What this report is we have required communications as auditors with you as the board. And this report serves the purpose of those communications. So I'll go through these relatively quickly. The first piece being our responsibilities under the auditing standards are described in our engagement letter, which is attached as Exhibit A in this. We issued a separate communication regarding the plan, scope, and timing of our audit. As far as accounting policies and practices, in our view, management has selected the preferable accounting practice. The association did not adopt any significant new accounting policies this year, and we did not identify any significant accounting policies in controversial or emerging areas, and we did not identify any significant or unusual transactions. Management informed us there are no particularly sensitive accounting estimates in these financial statements. And then lastly, as far as audit adjustments, there were no audit adjustments made to the original trial balance given to us to do our audit. And we're also not aware of any uncorrected misstatements other than those that are clearly trivial. We encountered no disagreements with management over anything as it related to the audit. We're not aware of any consultations management had with other accountants. No significant issues arising from the audit were discussed with management, and we didn't encounter any significant difficulties in dealing with management during the audit. And we did not encounter any significant and difficult or contentious matters that required consultation outside of our engagement team. And also behind Exhibit B is a copy of a written communication between us and our firm as the representation letter that was signed by Chris and Patrick, basically saying they've given us access to all the information we needed to do the audit, and a copy of that letter is provided. And then lastly, on the very last page of this booklet, because you're a CFC borrower, they ask your auditor to provide a certification each year. And so the certification this year basically states that during our audit period, the association did not receive any long-term advances from CFC this year. And so that's a letter they require to be presented to them annually. And so now that I've gone through that, I will pause at this time and be glad to answer any questions that anyone may have related to any of the numbers that I've gone over or anything else for that matter.
Woody, thank you. Yeah, see if there are questions.
Woody, I thought I was gonna get you off the hook there, but I saw a couple hands pop up. So Kirsten?
Yeah, so I have several, Woody, but I don't think I think they're more for Patrick, because what an audit does for me is it frequently, since it kind of you see things in a different order. And so it's really helpful. So I have a lot of, well, how come this is different than last year? And I don't know that Woody's necessarily gonna know it. Woody, I wanted to make sure that you didn't think we weren't paying attention. That's right. It's not why we don't have questions necessarily. But I've got a lot and I've sent them to him and I'm fine on vacation and stuff. But it's things that, that pop to mind when you see it in a different way.
I got you.
Yeah.
And I don't mind questions at all. So don't be afraid to ask.
But I think if they're audit related and otherwise, I appreciate and respect that if these are things that you can take up with Patrick and figure out, that'd be great. Rachel,
I don't know if this is for the auditor or Patrick, but
figure it out.
on the cash equivalence section, there's just a couple of notes of how we have uninsured cash that's more than federally insured limits. We don't believe we have significant credit risk or exposure there. Is that normal?
Yes, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, but basically what this disclosure is designed to do is that many years ago, there was a banking crisis before my time, and the accounting standards said, well, we need to know from each organization what cash they hold in excess of the FDIC limits. So that's the reason for this disclosure. This disclosure does not mean that you should be making necessary steps to spread your cash account in enough banks to get that coverage. It's just an informational disclosure, and has been in financial statements for my entire career. And so it's informational. It's in all the financial statements. So it's not to bring to light any kind of significant risk. It's just a factual disclosure. And the nature of your business doesn't lend itself to saying that you need to make sure that you invest in enough banks to cover yourself on that risk.
Anything else? Nicole?
I remember we talked about this a little bit last year. And it was like, I think that Patrick was gonna look into like, does it make sense to spread things out? Just another thought I had, when you were carrying all this cash, do we keep that in high interest savings accounts, high yield savings accounts? Cause that, yeah, I can make, I know right now, like locally, you can get 4.5% if you're with these kind of numbers.
Yeah, I do not know the details on our cash management distribution. I'm very happy to get that for you. Patrick will know right off the top of his head. Sorry, I don't have the detail on that for you.
It's just an easy way to make money.
Yeah, absolutely.
There is something in here, I think it's in the audit, that we have sweep accounts. So that we are doing nightly stuff, so that is bringing in more funds than you would get from normal. I don't remember where it is, but it's someplace in this package. I know that it must be this.
Yeah, we're not leaving it idle, but I don't have the details for you on how.
Yeah.
And I'll get that.
I think we have two. We have one with a local bank, and I think we have one with see it. Right. I can look at
You do it. You have $5 million of your funds at year end invested in CFC, which are earning interest, and then you do have a sweep account with your banks that was holding about $3.2 million as well to help guard against the FDIC overage.
Thanks, Woody.
Anything else for Woody? Great.
All right. Well, before we wrap this section up, a huge thank you to Patrick and Absentia. Patrick and his team spent a massive amount of time making sure that Jackson Burton had everything they needed. I am super appreciative of their efforts, but also the result. And this is a I think really positive for us and something we're gonna be able to then immediately share with our members, so they can have that level of transparency and comfort that we're doing a good job with our budget and have a clean audit.
Should we consciously say that, we're not going to go into executive session to ask any questions, because we have that opportunity, but we need to say that we don't feel we need the opportunity. Anybody?
I think you've consciously said it.
I've consciously said it, okay.
All right, well then, yeah, thanks very much, Woody. Much appreciated.
Well, I was conscious.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Woody.
Thank you.
And I'm gonna circle back to the question of, board action required related to that presentation, or are we moving on to the patronage capital?
Let me take one look at last year's minutes.
I recall a very similar question conversation
Oh,
from
it
last
is
year.
it is a
ahead, Jan.
recommendation coming out of the FAC. So if you look at the FAC report, it has the recommendation. So the FAC is making a recommendation to pass a motion that approves the audit.
Okay, then I think, accept it, right? Accept the audit, accept it. Let's go ahead and keep that in the order that it is in the agenda then, and we will get to that during the back report. Which then moves us to, this patronage capital topic / motion. It's sitting in front of you. Any discussion about that before? Where am I here? Before we take a motion. Let's go ahead and get a motion on the floor then.
So moved.
All right, moved. I put words in your mouth, Kohler, but move to accept resolution 2025-06 allocation of patronage capital.
Yes.
Second, Rachel, seconded. Any discussion on that resolution? Go ahead, Kohler.
Just a quick one, because I know that Tri-State has a big chunk of this. Kirsten, maybe you can, is that generated from their money they receive from United for their exit? Is that part of their margin? I didn't think their margins were that big to really get this percentage.
Yeah, well, we may wanna, I'll give you as much information as I have, but I think probably want that in executive session because of the confidentiality required by Tri-State. So we do have an updated long-term financial forecast from Tri-State that is protected by our NDA with them and our confidentiality. And I know there was a request to change the agenda to make time for that in executive session, so I'll circle back on that if I may.
Okay, and we can still go ahead with this. I
Yes.
just need that answer from my voting.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks. And Dan Huntington, I see your hand.
Yeah, I need some clarification on this. It states in there that these are all 2024 capital credits, nothing 20 years back.
This is just the allocation, so retirement will be at a different time.
Okay, just allocation.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Any other discussion before we go to a vote? All right, then all in favor of the approval of resolution of 2025-06, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, passes. Okay, then on to board action agenda. Joseph.
Please.
Oh, yeah, we'll carve it out of some other break, but yeah. Let's take a quick break, five minutes, come back. All right.
Check the tier.
Yeah, thanks for asking, Joe.
Yes, thanks for asking.
In your list. Welcome back, everyone. We are currently at agenda item 5, board action. Section A, committee on policies update. Nicole.
So it's very brief, it's in the packet. We are on our second week of working on the same policy. And there's still time to contribute. We're also, please speak to me offline if you have any ideas on increasing efficiency. I've certainly run some ideas by, and it doesn't, I've yet to find a way to do this in a better way than just going through it line by line, which is tedious and time consuming. So that's where we're at right now. Pardon?
We do use some, I think, had some committee members use some AI to do some analysis of our policies as they've come up. Starting to try to deploy that.
Okay, any questions about shielding?
So I think we returned the recommendation to approve policy 101 as presented last month. We didn't receive any meaningful changes, and it was on our consent agenda, so we didn't really spend much committee time reviewing it. So I think it's time to look forward to it.
So that comes forward as a recommendation.
Recommendation, so it's pending now, it doesn't need a second.
No second. Any discussion that anyone wants to have before we vote on approval of policy 101?
Just as a reminder, this was the policy, as Tim brought up, that we had everyone look at. We presented it last month. So, would someone like to make a motion?
We don't need to.
It's already done.
Okay.
We're in discussion and I don't see any further discussion. So then all in favor of approving the modifications to policy 101, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Or abstentions? All right, motion passes. Thanks a lot. Moving us into Tim, Finance and Audit Committee update.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right, if you don't, give me a signal. So the report is in your packet, and there are 2 actions that FAC recommended to the board coming out of it. And I have to backtrack a little bit. Earlier I said we had a recommendation to accept the audit, and I was a little off base. It was a recommendation to, out of an executive session discussion, to release the audited financials as appropriate to fulfill the request of a member for specific trial balance information, and to not provide the specific trial balance information, as it contains some individual members' confidential information. So maybe we'll take that recommendation first on that release of that information. I think the confidential information that's in the audited financials could be redacted. Otherwise, it would be our FAC's recommendation to release that information. So.
Thanks, Tim. So we'll, I guess, accept that as a recommendation from FAC. So that is a motion on the floor. Any discussion before we vote on that recommendation? Rachel.
Just a clarification, what do you mean by trial balance?
The trial balance is a accounting term for the sort of closing of the accounts at the end of the year. It contains a lot of information. We reviewed that. We don't think it's appropriate. We reviewed it with Patrick. It's not easily understood information unless you're an accountant familiar with it. So it's a term. Trial balance is a term in the accounting world.
Thank you.
Kohler.
So just on how we go about doing this, shouldn't we accept the audit before we say we're gonna share it, just in case it were to fail? Should that go first instead of this one?
I don't think it's relevant one way or another, Kohler. I think in a minute we could accept the financials. They are what they are. And we didn't see any changes that we needed to make. So personally, I don't see any a reason to do one before the other.
And if I can say that the member request isn't solely for this year, right? It's for multiple years, so it would be the general consensus of the FAC was that instead of providing the trial balance in any year, that the audited financials are the appropriate level of information to be disclosed.
It's a fair, I think it's a fair procedural statement, or are you okay with us going
Oh, yeah,
through this way? Yeah, thanks. Thank you.
So the summary of our audited financials is part of our annual report. The audit is not published, but it
Is available on.
is
request.
available on request. Okay, thank you very much.
Any more discussion on the FAC recommendation? All right, then all in favor of that recommendation to provide that information, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Yeah, Dan, Dan Huntington, we can't see how you voted on that.
Dan, if you can hear us, could you at least unmute and give us an aye or a vote on that? He must be absent for this vote.
We can mark him.
Yeah. So got that, Janelle? Is that all right?
Got it.
Right. Thanks. Well, then motion passes. Thanks, Tim. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. The other recommendation that we have coming out of this is to approve resolution 2025-07, the CFC disaster response line of credit authorization rather than application. There was a lot of discussion around this resolution, which is provided by the lender, CFC. And it's not truly an application. It authorizes in an emergency the named individuals in the authorization. We're recommending it be the CEO to incur debt and to make make an application to utilize a line of credit that will be provided up to $17.5 million to respond to a disaster in which our infrastructure has been damaged. It would allow for money and funds to be freed up. That would then be available in a very quick and timely manner to respond to that disaster and rebuild infrastructure. And we also in this motion want to update the language, as I said, by replacing application with authorization, and eventually include a revision to policy 103, which would authorize the CEO to incur debt in response to a disaster. So there, subsequent to this, the FAC would make further recommendations to policy 103. Sorry, is that a good enough motion? Yeah.
I think to be clear, right now what we're doing is voting on approving the resolution as presented, and then I think the rest of it was sort of informational to the non-committee members that there is some carry-on activities beyond this in policy review that FAC will do at a future meeting.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Graham. That's helpful. Thanks.
Nicole?
Yeah, I just have a question on the terms, and I'm sorry if I missed it when I tried to read through this. So the maturation date of the line of credit, is that just when we stop drawing from it?
There is not, and this is not an application. This is not approval of the line of credit. It's approval of someone to apply for, and it provides that named person the authority to set things like you just asked. So we're not setting that at this point. We're only providing this authorization, which would be the CEO can exceed the current, well, I'm not sure it's exceed, but in line with policy 103, exceed budgetary authority and incur and apply for debt up to $17.5 million through an application for a line of credit facility. Does that help?
Yeah, it does. So this is, and then, you know, this is an excess, because we already have the 25 million line of credit, that's already terms are in place. And then this would both give the authority to the CEO and I imagine streamline the process because it's the initial conversations are already done.
That's right.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I would say the scenario here is, imagine a bad fire knocks out substation and some miles of line. We would immediately be calling in mutual aid. We would want to be able to assure our neighbors who were coming to help us that we could pay them.
Right.
And this would be one great example of how we could immediately activate that type of aid, is to have this in place.
Is that at all like a pre-approval? Or no?
I mean, I think that's essentially, I guess the resolution here is to authorize me to pursue this line of credit in the course of an emergency, so that we could move very quickly. This would get us, in a sense, kind of through that initial 10 to 14 day period, at which point, right, we have an emergency board meeting, but it might be difficult to do that in that first 10 days. So that's kind of the scenario that we're trying to be ready for. And authorizing this would set us up for that situation.
Thank you.
Anything else before we vote on resolution 2025-07? All right, then all in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Hey, Dan, Dan, you just came back on. What's your vote on that? Dan, can you hear us?
Thumbs up.
We'll take that as an aye, thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, Tim, still got to deal with the audit, right?
I guess so. So I will certainly make a motion. This is not necessarily a committee motion because we did not discuss a recommendation to accept the audit. I was mistaken when I said that earlier. So I will just make a motion that we accept the audit as presented.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of accepting the audit as presented, raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Okay, that's unanimous. Thanks. Okay, let's see. Well, we got Matt on the line. So let's do a little shuffle, agenda shuffle, and we'll get through.
Do we have any objections to the agenda shuffle? Seeing none, I think we can proceed.
Fair enough. Okay, let's then move into attorney update. Hello, Matt.
Hello, it's nice to see y'all.
You too.
So yeah, you guys have new digs there, I noticed. So hey, real quick, this won't take very long. Kind of three general updates moving across FERC, 10th Circuit, Colorado PC. So at FERC, the rate case is still in settlement, judge procedures. So there's activities going on with respect to that, and it just kind of continues to move along. We can take any more detailed questions in executive session, because potentially implicates settlement privilege. There's two different appeals at the 10th Circuit. They're at very different stages. We are interveners in both. So with respect to the one on the total CTP value, so the, kind of the big ticket appeal, that one is fully briefed. Expectation is that oral argument is going to be set on that in the next 3 to 4 months. So we've been working with other similarly situated interveners. We've been briefing it together, which has been the directive of the court. That's all been done. And then there's a separate appeal that's going on with respect to the December 5th compliance filing that's also been filed at the 10th Circuit. There's a briefing schedule for that just issued. So unlike the first appeal, that one's very much at the front end of the process, and it's going to take some time to move through the 10th Circuit. So that's the update coming from the federal courts. And then at the ERP side, y'all will recall we were interveners in the Tri-State Electric Resource Plan proceeding. That has two phases to it, a phase one and a phase two. Phase one is, inputs and assumptions where those things get evaluated. Phase two is where the actual portfolio of resources is presented. Tri-State, late last week filed their it's called a 120-day report, which really contains their preferred portfolio. It's got 700 megawatts of wind and solar, 650 megawatts of storage, 307 megawatts of natural gas. That will now go through a pretty extensive process, takes about 200 days in front of the Colorado PUC, and then it will ultimately be approved or modified or rejected. So very much at the front end of that, the Tri-State has kind of put their proposed course of action out there. And that's kind of the updates. Take any questions, we're going to go to executive session.
Questions for Matt? Before we go into executive session? I don't see any. Then take a motion to go into executive session and recall that we did modify executive session slightly.
Second.
So I'll just announce publicly that the topics of the executive session will be attorney update on FERC and related actions, power supply progress, confidential aspects of that, report on security, business continuity, and access control priorities, real estate transaction update, and Tri-State long-term financial forecast update.
Okay, that's our executive session agenda. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Okay, unanimous. Folks online, go find your other invite and rejoin us. We need to shuffle the room just a little bit. All right. Welcome back. For those of you online, we're jumping back into the agenda. Board action, item C, appointing voting delegate for a CFC conference. It was John.
He's on the phone outside.
Oh, that's John. Sorry, I was like, what other doing? All right, if he's here, he's here.
He's here.
Okay, yeah, let's jump into that. Kohler put his name in the hat.
Yeah.
Other names?
No, I was going to nominate.
Okay.
Second.
Let me move this back.
Sorry.
No, for that, thank you. Moved and seconded, open for discussion. I'll throw in discussion, which those of you help me out, like, I'm not sure we've done this regularly in the past. So my discussion / question is, do we want to actually send somebody to the CFC conference or not? Staff, Chris informed me that staff will be attending, so I'm not sure if we have LPEA important business activity that we're attempting to accomplish there.
And in the past year or so, the CEO that has attended has acted as the delegate.
So there is business activity to be accomplished.
They got a bylaw amendment coming up.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead, that's it.
And they're an integral part to our finance, and I think it'd be important for a board member to be part of that, just to see how they operate, so he can come back for to the board.
Discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a relationship-based industry to some degree, so I think that if feel like Kohler could be good. Advocate for us out there.
Thank you, and I think it's also really important for me to understand what our future finance schedule or operations is gonna be. It's gonna be completely different than what we have right now. I had a little exposure to this when I was on the Tri-State board, because we're gonna be basically doing what they're doing now. Credit ratings, and I know DMEA, when they got out, they were looking at selling bonds. I don't know if they ever did or not. I think United got their credit rating. It's gonna be a whole different picture. I want to get a lot more comfortable. So this is my emphasis on my trying to go there.
All right, so we have, Kohler as the only nominee. Help me out, Graham.
I think we can, say under small board rules, if there's any objection to Kohler.
Yeah. Any objections to Kohler being the delegate? Okay, then
Seeing none.
there's a word for this by, acclamation.
Thank you.
All right, then, yeah, last item under board, action, item D, consideration of proposed bylaw amendments. You all, of course, remember discussion on this from last meeting. As we left that, we motioned, or we approved the motion to table until this meeting. And now at this meeting, it was also requested that Graham do, some research on that. That memo is in the packet. And you can see what Graham discovered in that research, and then also, recommendations that we might take if we agree with those recommendations. So, we can either have discussion and get a motion on the table.
Make a motion.
Nicole,
I move to refer the member proposed bylaw amendments to the Committee on Policies to attempt to engage with the members that drafted the proposed bylaw amendments and to review the proposed bylaw amendments, to report to the board monthly on the progress of that review and to return to the board with a recommendation within a reasonable time.
okay, almost like Graham said.
Just a little something I came up with.
Motion on the table.
I'll second it.
Thanks, Holly. Discussion on going forward with that.
Yeah, I really object to this going forward. I think it was really presented in an back room, back door, underhanded fashion. I'll vote against this. And I really think that board members need to be more respectful of how they bring these major considerations forward. Again, I'm really disappointed that it came off the way it did. I think it should have been presented as it's written in our bylaws. I don't think it was. I think this could be challenged legally. Anyway, I'll vote against it.
Anybody else discussion?
Tim has.
Oh, sorry, Tim. Go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I guess I support the motion, but I don't know if it needs an addition or an amendment to the amendment or to the motion that basically says if people don't step forward to that they take ownership of providing this, that we just drop that. So unless the member is willing to say, I made that motion, or I'm asking for this bylaw amendment, rather than an aggregate and we need to identify that individual, that we don't pursue that, because it's not something that came from the board. And Dan made that clear. He was not making that amendment, or excuse me, that bylaw proposal. And I can't find the memo that you wrote offhand, Graham. Maybe it already includes that in the motion.
It does not, Tim. So yeah, that would be an amendment to the current motion. So it's it
does say attempt to engage the members.
Yep. And so we could probably add something along that line that says that and then put a conditional clause sort of in the middle of it to say that, and if the member responds, then to report to the board monthly on progress of review and to return to the board with a recommendation within a reasonable time. So this would sort of add some conditionality to that. So if the member doesn't engage, then there's no more obligation to report or return. And we can make that express too, if you'd like, and sort of add that, and sort of say, and if the member engages, then to review, report monthly, and return with the recommendation in a reasonable time, and if the members do not engage, to consider the matter dismissed.
Yeah, I would frame it as the author needs to be identified and indicate they still support this before any kind of pursuit by the COP, unless the COP in and of itself wants to make a recommendation to the board on their own. I mean, it's out of our process and we're trying to accommodate something, but if authors don't show up, I don't want to waste our time and money and members' time and money on it. So that's my thought.
Comment from John Witchell.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to vote against this for largely the reasons that Tim identified, but really aligning with Joe on this. It's totally, if some member actually has a complaint and they think that they want to go through an entire bylaw revision exercise, and let's be clear, spend tens of thousands of dollars of this co-op's money to move that process through, then they should come forth and stand up for at least 5 minutes during open session or in some formal form. But in the absence of that, and they want to hide behind Facebook or whatever channel they think that they're going to communicate this through, whatever back room they're going to do it, and they are unwilling to step forward, then I consider that to be just noise and gossip. And I'll be voting against this. This is a lot of money for a process matter at a moment in time where this board needs to be focused on real issues that actually impact the membership, like keeping rates low and making sure that we have a smooth exit from tri-state. This is a complete sideshow. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Other comments?
So the motion stands because I haven't made an amendment. Is that?
Yeah, you haven't proposed an amendment. So.
I'll let it stand and vote accordingly then. Thanks.
All right, no further discussion. Oh, go ahead, Fuller.
I just didn't hear what he said the last part.
He's not going to amend it.
So we're going by the original.
Yeah, original motion, no amendment by Tim.
Sorry if you couldn't hear me.
We'll go to vote. Another one.
Well, I don't know what's gonna come to, I'm on the policy committee. I don't know what's gonna come to us. What is gonna come, we're just flying blind, so we're just gonna have a meeting and start talking about this. It seems to me that, I would like to say, they've gotta come forward and, again, I'm gonna vote against it, but it seems there should be some sort of a time limit on this to say, if they don't come forward in 30 days, before, maybe our May policy committee meeting, that, this thing goes away. It just doesn't make any sense that, this is like an open-ended discussion on something very big that I don't know what we're gonna do with this as a policy committee member.
Well, I guess just procedurally, and help me out, Graham, but member can come forward anytime they want, right? We have a policy that says that, right? So I don't believe that procedurally we need to set a time limit on when a member needs to come forward to support a bylaw suggestion, whether it be one of the ones that's on the list now or one in the future.
But this has been made.
If we take no action, no action happens, and help me out with that. I think one of the board's options here is to take no action. And that leaves the members with the same options that they had before, which is bring it up at a board meeting, in the comment section. And then it would be discussed at the next board meeting, or the petition methodology. So, I don't know, read into that more.
It just says discussion.
Hmm?
I think it just says discussion, like you said, right? It will get discussed at the next board meeting.
Right. There's no mandatory action.
No, I guess, but. Yeah, I guess if the current motion, fails to carry, right, then I think we should probably have at the very least, a motion to continue the item to the next meeting or to reject it in whatever, or just, we can have a motion that comes up that, I mean, if the motion is that the majority of the board feels that this didn't comply with policy 112 sufficiently enough to consider it under that policy, make a determination. I think an affirmative determination is reasonable in any way, right? That makes sense. I mean, like, because, and even if that determination is to continue it into the May meeting.
But
for a later meeting.
if this didn't pass, it dies here, right?
I don't think that's exactly the case, right?
That's
Because-
what I don't understand.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying is that this is a motion to refer this to committee. And so if it doesn't get referred to committee, it's still staying with the board. So I think you need to make some sort of decision on it. That decision can be to continue it to next month. That decision can be to reject it. Decision can be, you have a lot, pretty much, as I think Kirsten is sort of saying, it goes back to discussion as a general topic, right? What do you want to do with it? It's a much more open-ended decision. And so I don't want to sort of forestall debate by sort of picking a few arguments and laying them out there. I think would be the point of debate for the board. But I mean, what's pending before the board now is a motion to refer this to committee. And we need to decide that.
But to that point, I think it's important to understand, based on how we decide on this, my suggestion that no further action is required has been rebutted, is probably not right. And that we do need to take some action on this item. And that action can be, any action that the board has available to it, but it could be table, postpone, disregard, maybe not the right terminology, but those are actions that are possible based on the outcome of this particular current motion.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate both Daryl and John and Tim's point, but my gut is that this wasn't nefarious, that this was like a confused process. And so I say we just, I am totally amenable to that amendment, to putting that in there, because I agree, if they're not gonna engage, then I'm not gonna advocate on their behalf and even really consider it on their behalf without some engagement from the members. But I'm taking it as, this was a communication with a board member and there was some confusion on the process, but I want to, in the spirit of the policy, respond to it. And I think I would like to hash out the nitty gritty of that at our COP meeting on Monday among the board members of how we would do that exactly. Not to actually, but just to figure out the process. I'd like to punt that conversation if we decide to do it on Monday. And I would like to then propose the amendment to can I amend my own? Yeah, I'd like to amend my own motion to make this contingent upon proactive engagement with the members who proposed the bylaw amendments.
Within a time frame as Joe suggested, or?
Prior to the May.
Before the May COP.
Could you repeat that again? You said the attempt in there, that's.
So attempt is already in here, right?
Yeah, I would make this contingent upon engagement with the members who proposed the bylaw amendment prior to the May COP.
Thank you.
That sounds great.
Gives me clarity.
Okay,
Brilliant.
so-
Accepted.
So we have a second on the amendment?
I think the same second.
Same second, okay, right, and so then we should vote quickly. I mean, can we vote on this amendment? Do we need to have discussion on it?
Yeah, if you're telling us we need 2 votes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, yeah, we should do that, and then, and then if you vote in favor of the amendment, you're not committed to voting in favor of the underlying decision, right? So, for instance, Joe, you can say, I think this is good, but I still don't like the idea of big picture. You can vote for the amendment, but against the amended motion.
Does anybody need anything else before we vote on
the amendment?
Just the amendment.
I see Tim.
Tim, do you have
Tim, go ahead.
Discussion on the amendment?
Can I make a further amendment?
Yeah. Yes, what would your suggestion be?
So I move that we drop the first two, the motion and amendment, and we notify the person that brought it here that if members want to propose these, they should do so by appearing as the process outlines at a board meeting and stating their case.
That enter minute to the amendment?
I'll
Was that
second that. I'll second that.
a point of order? I don't
Yeah.
get where the amendment to the amendment is.
So the amendment is basically a restatement of the motion, right? So what we would have now, as the motion has been moved and seconded to amend it to basically that we instruct the members that they need to strictly comply with policy 112, which is significantly different than referring this to committee. So I would sort of say it's kind of moving away from it's a totally different motion, right? And so I would say at this point, it's gonna take this.
Can you substitute motion?
Yeah.
It feels like you have to vote on the amendment before you do a substitute motion. Recalling my own Robert's Rules days.
I think that's probably right.
So free time.
So we should probably.
Yeah, I think we vote on the amendment that's here before we vote on what we're considering, Tim, is yours is a substitute motion.
I can not really hear you, so I'm not quite sure what. Just once you finish your discussion, if you tell me what you think, that would be helpful because I cannot hear you.
So what we're proposing to do here is to vote on Nicole's amendment to her motion. And then come back to your, what we're calling a substitute motion. That your substitute motion is not an amendment to Nicole's amendment.
I see. So another amendment wasn't allowed, has to be a motion.
That's what we're going with. So we're gonna vote on Nicole's amendment. Any questions on that amendment?
Okay.
You have a question on that amendment?
Question on, okay, well, let's just go ahead.
All right, all in favor of Nicole's amendment, which to be clear, adds the stipulation that COP will not do work on this before they are contacted by a member related to the specific bylaw suggestion.
May call.
Before the May COP meeting. Thanks for adding that. Okay, all in favor? Okay, hold them up, hold them up.
Yeah, and two hands.
I got two on mine.
Okay.
Okay, and all opposed? Got one. All right, so we have an amended motion. We're gonna go to the subsequent motion, substitute motion. All right, so Tim has a substitute motion. Which would you like to clarify one more time?
I'll try. I move that we vacate the previous motion and instruct the person that brought these suggested bylaw amendments to inform the members that they need to follow the process that is outlined in the policy. Otherwise, there'll be no action.
Okay, need a second for that. John, did you second that? Rachel? That's a head.
Yes, I did. That's a second. That's a second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Kirsten, discussion on that?
Yeah, I'd like to speak against the substitute amendment. The substitute motion. Recall that one of these bylaw changes were started because we were not following our own policy. We had a policy that said board member expenses are out on our website. We conveniently unknowingly did not follow those. One of these bylaw things, I tried to address that because they thought we weren't listening, okay? So what we're saying, we're holding our members to a higher definition of what the spirit of a policy is. We screwed up, we said we screwed up, okay, we'll fix it, okay? They screwed up because they didn't quite understand. They knew they wanted to get it public. They thought they could take it to a director, they could get it public. And then I think we all learned after the fact that, oh, they're supposed to do it in front of us. And I wish they had done it in front of us, but they didn't. We were very forgiving of ourselves when we didn't follow our own policy. I would like to beg some forgiveness on the part of our members that they didn't follow their policy, our policy. Give them a break if they want it and ask them to come forward. If they say no, I'm all totally with you. You know, if there's a ghost out there, we can't deal with a ghost. So let's go for it. But I can't accept this substitute amendment, and I am voting against it. Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion on the substitute amendment? John Witchell.
I would, this is going to sound confrontational, but it's not. Respectfully, you don't know that unless you have first person knowledge of that person. You're speculating on their intentions and their beliefs. So that assertion on its face is false. You simply don't know what their intentions were, having not ever spoken to them, whoever they are, unless you're withholding some information here, which I don't think you are. So
Fair.
why would you assert their intention and then act on an imagined or hypothesized intention? I think Tim's hang on. I think Tim is advocating, and I think a fair one, is saying, okay, there perhaps has been a miscommunication here. Give this person a chance, give them a reasonable window to respond. It's not a complicated response. It's not an expensive thing for them to do. If they don't show up, the matter's closed. We're not being heavy-handed there, and we're giving the member the benefit of the doubt. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I appreciate what you said about that. I can't be in my member's mind, and I certainly cannot be in that, and that's fair. We do know that Dan Huntington, at the time he said this, said, I thought this, I was bringing it forward for my member. So he thought the same thing, and he said that. So I am not inferring that from him. I'm basing it upon what.
Is Dan here? Let him speak for himself.
He's got
Zoom is set up totally unless you're already connected, so I don't think he was able to.
So he can't get into Zoom.
Then again, you're back to square one. Then the alternative would be to just table a motion for another month, let Dan run around, work with his constituents, figure out how they want to tackle it. I'm assuming good intention here, but let's not presume to know the thinking of people who are not in the room. That's a modest statement.
I agree. So we should try to get them in the room, which I believe is step one of the first motion. Get them in the room.
Yeah.
Agreed. I think we're great.
Okay, any other discussion on substitute motion by Tim? All right, then we're voting. All in favor of Tim's substitute motion, raise your hand and say aye. Aye. I see three. All opposed? Aye.
8.
Okay. So substitute motion fails. Original motion still on the
Well,
table.
resume the amended motion.
Amended motion still on the table. All from Nicole. Any further discussion on that?
This is the amended.
So this is the motion that was amended to say that we need to hear from these people by the next committee by the May committee on call, not the one on Monday, the one in May.
Clear on that? All in favor?
It's unanimous.
All right, well done, everybody. I know that was hard.
I learned one.
Good.
I've never heard this substitute motion before.
It was really messy thing was one main and 2 substitute motions on the floor at any one time like that.
It's a good hard work when you can get through that, and appreciate staff's guidance.
So we don't have to vote on the original
Well, it was that we voted to amend it, and so then Tim proposed a substitute, so instead of considering the amended motion on up or down, Tim offered a substitute motion, which failed to carry, so then we resumed the amended main motion. It'll be super clear.
Oh, once you read the minutes.
Crystal.
So you can Dave, we're talking to the thumbs up.
All right, going down the agenda, I am now reminded that I did not report coming out of executive session, that we don't have any action items coming out of executive session, so. Moving into the reports section of the agenda. Anything from you, Graham?
I just refer to my written report and any questions.
The questions for Graham or about his report? Thank you, seeing none. Director reports. Who has something they want to share? I'll go first.
I do feel compelled to point out the building proposal for CREA. They are looking at, changing their headquarters location. They do have a full-blown proposal that I included in the board packet. It was dated early in March, and I don't know why I didn't find it in my email. I did not, but it was voted on in March at the CRA board meeting to proceed with due diligence on that. So they are looking at a new headquarters. If anybody's ever been to the CRA headquarters that's in current existence, it is dangerous. It is dangerous, like you're taking your life in your hands each time you go in or out of the parking lot, and I can see why they want to do this. They have put a cap on what they would be willing to spend per cooperative at 3,000 max annually for whatever the mortgage is. That's their maximum, that they're gonna like pull the plug on the whole thought, but nonetheless, I wanted to make sure you guys knew that was on the table. So, other than that, any other questions?
Maybe some space released by the Durango Airport.
Syria questions for Holly or any other director reports?
Roundup question.
Yes. Yep.
It's seldom that we see a request not get funded. And I'm wondering, this Durango Cafe will play?
Yes, so it was really part of their submission, the finance part. We have members that used to be accountants. And we've requested that if they could reapply, but what they had set forward was not up to snuff for the board members. Okay. So it's not like it's a nay, it's like it didn't make sense. But thank you.
Anything else on Director Kirsten?
I have a question on Western United, and actually it came from the Western United report, but it's not on Western United. It's about how much more money we paid for buying this year than we did last year. I'm sorry, I'm looking at you, buddy. So is that for projects? Is it for building our inventory? It was like $8 million versus $3 million. It was $5 million more that we bought from WUE.
A lot of it is inflation. And then a lot of it is it's just the projects. We're spending a lot of capital.
Yeah, I know this was one of the years we're doing our best getting our capital project done. So that's what I was thinking was, I'm surprised it was also inflation. Okay.
And we'll find more. I'll be going out to Denver next week and see if we have any more settlement on how much those true costs may be. Probably not, but I will definitely ask that question. So they've been very proactive, but the tariffs have been kind of all over the place.
Right. I have a thing or two from Tri-State that I'd like to highlight.
Sure. Yeah.
So their board report is a heck of a lot better than my board report, and it includes their annual meeting report. So look at theirs. They did approve our LPEA's 115 project. It would end next year. We needed to end when we end in June. Yeah, it was going to end in June. We needed to extend it to next year. So that's our project that it basically makes up our 5%. So they did approve that. There was one question of, well, what does this do for us? And staff was really clear is, hey, they're a member. You know, it's good for them. It's good for us. So that was I appreciated
Can I
that.
question on
Yeah.
that? So can you explain, I've never heard this 115, 117 project. What is that?
That's the thing that guides, right, that currently guides the 5%. That's the one that says you can do 5%, you have to do the. Can you
You talking about the policy or the project?
Well, I'm just looking at presented a
Both
request
combined.
extension to LPA 115, 117 project.
Yes, so
Just
that
reading.
originally was only through June of this year. We had to extend it till when we leave.
Okay.
And can we talk about that project?
I can talk about, I just won't use the name.
Okay, that'd be
But
great.
yeah, it's what comprises about 80% of the 5% that we self-generate today. And it's a waste heat recovery project. There's an industrial plant that has waste heat, now they generate electricity with it. So we've been buying from that project for several years. The last contract was an 8-year contract. And this will extend it till April of 26. And we are working concurrently with the generation owner to renew theirs for more like a 10-year term. That will be part of our portfolio. And that's something we'll be bringing to the board very likely next month. Because if it expires in June, I need approval in May.
So that's different from the West, which also was approved by the board to go out to each of the members. So the West, which is the wholesale electric service contract, no,
Yes.
I hate acronyms. That was approved, it will go out, it takes the limiting of the self-supply, it takes it out of policy 115. It puts it into 115, the amount, so it can be changed easier. They're going from 5% to 20%. They're also going to exclude net metering towards self-supply. This is really only going to affect us for this little bit of time that we're going to be with them. If we are going over 5%, we may want to consider.
That's only if we sign a contract.
Only if we sign the contract, because if we don't sign the contract, we're still under the 5%, so we'll have to pay for the overage, and I know we have exceeded it a little bit, but it's not much,
I
right?
mean, it's $80,000 to $100,000.
Okay, well, $80,000 to $100,000, and I think you guys are still having discussions by that, I mean, Graham and I'm sure Chris.
Yeah, I'm happy to address that with Graham. We did look carefully at what they sent us. It would completely reverse our current agreements around debt obligation. So we think it would be a material impact on us to move forward with that contract. I hear you loud and clear that there is this slight overage that we would have to have responsibility for a short period, but that is very small compared to the debt obligation of that contract.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
So you've weighed those risks, and that's the important part, that's great. And the other thing to take a look at is take a look at their government relations report. You know how Holly sends us the CRE stuff and what's important to us as a state. As we get into SPP and we start looking at it, we're going to be looking at a much broader area. So not only are what our states around us doing, but also what's affecting us at the federal level. So I think that's a really good resource for y'all to look at. One of the interesting things was Wyoming just signed HB 0192, which limits which has wildfire liability limits, which of course is going to be able to help with the cost of insurance, which, as we all know, is going up for all co-ops, especially in Colorado. So those are the things I wanted to highlight. I'm open to any questions.
Is there anything moving on the Colorado legislature to kind of follow what Wyoming did?
Not on the, I don't think on the wildfire. I know that there was one on kind of doing a self-insurance thing, but that was only gonna be non-co-ops, and I think that even died.
Yeah, I'm happy to give an update on that. So CREA has been working in this area for several years. They did not have any forward movement on this issue this year. I'm happy to provide more detail on that, but that is to me one of my disappointments with the current situation. There was an effort to look at involving utilities in a reinsurance approach. The Department of Insurance dropped that and is now a fee on residential and commercial insurance policies that would then be put into a reinsurance function in the state. So that's where that bill currently sits, still under consideration here in the final 3 weeks of the session, but nothing that directly relates to electric utilities.
So you said you're unhappy with the way it was. Is that the legislature or the CRA? What are you unhappy with?
I'm unhappy with, an outcome that had zero forward movement on an existential issue for co-ops, which is, we need a way to, we'll put it this way, the status quo is if a fire starts, the co-op or utility goes bankrupt. And all of that liability gets shifted onto the state or public entities. That is a terrible status quo. And we did not get any forward movement on legislation now for several years on this super important topic. So that's the disappointment I'm expressing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just want to share something I heard at the end of the PPA meeting I went to, which was over 50% of losses, the settlements that come out of lawsuits go to trial lawyers.
Yeah.
And so they're the biggest obstacle in getting this change happening. So
That's why it failed last year, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I tell you stories upon stories about that dynamic. But we have to think about this in a fresh way because we are essentially putting the taxpayer on the hook for the status quo is terrible for everyone.
Except trial lawyers.
Yeah, except for Trump.
Graham, are you?
Not corporate lawyers.
My trial lawyers?
Corporate lawyers.
Corporate lawyers.
Yeah, a different kind of.
Yes.
Any other tri-state things? Thanks, Kirsten. Anything else on director reports? Okay, anything else for the good of the organization? Go ahead, Joe.
I just had a question, comment about the consultant and contractor report, because it's a quarterly report, and I know all the names in here are confidential, but we have 3 line items on here for legal services that amount to, a lot of money, over $250,000. And my concern is we're getting reports from, one of the attorneys that I've heard almost the same thing for the last 3 years.
I can address this a little bit here. These higher bills are relating to the transactional documentation that we're doing with Tri-State as part of the departure, very little of that money goes towards the litigation updates that Matt is giving you in public or executive sessions. Almost all of that money is documentation drafting. And we've seen the PPAs, you've seen the settlement agreements, things of that nature.
Okay, but still, these redundant reports, I don't know that we need, unless there's something new. We haven't heard anything new about any of these in 2 years. And I guess my other question was that, we're still gonna see these kind of legal bills through way past 28 probably. Right. Outside of.
Yeah, as long as when we're negotiating multi-million-dollar power contracts, that we'll have a certain amount of, these, I will explain to you as a matter of attorney-client privilege exactly what is sort of going on with these particular documents and why, and I won't explain to all of you, but
again, Chris mentioned earlier, controllable expenses, backpacking, you take care of the ounces and the pounds take care of themselves, same sort of thing. So just to comment on that.
Is that something to put on next month's executive session then? Because I actually have an interest in hearing something that frames to that as opposed to a one-off.
Put that on the agenda. I'm happy to report on that in more detail. Absolutely. And I believe I'll have some very specific items to report on that by next month.
Thank you.
Fuller.
So maybe I missed this, but could you give us an idea of what's happening next month at the annual meeting and our board meeting? The schedule and what's gonna happen?
I think that's a great question. I sort of have a similar question. I'm not actually clear on what our schedule is for. So maybe maybe I just shoot out an email in the next day or two.
Please.
Yeah.
I'm getting questions than I
Yeah.
wanted myself.
Yeah, so I'll do that tomorrow.
I'm sorry, one more thing. So should we set a deadline on questions about the due diligence idea? To say, hey, questions should go to Chris by Friday or something, or, you know, by.
Better answer you want.
Or something.
Yeah, we'd be happy to talk to you about that.
Anything else?